across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good evening, and to coin a phrase, what just happened? Unbelievable, unbelievable scenes. This is the Political Asylum right here on Talk. I'm with Pete Barnes, political strategist. We'll be here for the next 3 hours, a special 3-hour show. Usually we quit at 9 o'clock and we play my show, What Just Happened. But because of the explosive scenes we've just witnessed in the White House, we're going live for the next 3 hours. I want to hear from all of you, obviously. What do you think? What did that all mean? There's supposed to be a press conference at something like 9 o'clock our time. That has been cancelled because Zelensky has stormed out. I mean, what a debate in the White House. Two furious presidents shouting at each other as Donald fumes, "Make a deal now or we're out!" Demanding that Zelensky says thank you for the $350 billion Joe Biden was stupid enough to send you. J.D. Vance chiming in, "Have you ever said thanks once?" Zelensky replying, "We've been doing this alone." I think I'm going to challenge Zelensky on that one. But unbelievable, astonishing. Your thoughts, please. Get involved. Get on the phone and call me on 0344 499 1000. Or you can WhatsApp voice note me on the same number, and I promise to play your message out. I'll give you the details about my programme, What Just Happened, a little bit later. It'll basically be delayed till tomorrow morning, but I'll tell you all about that in due course. In the meantime, we're going to get as many guests on. We're going to talk in a little while to Jerome Starkey, the security editor of The Sun, get his take on it. Greg Swenson standing by. We're going to go over to the States, see who we can get hold of. We're all working our backsides off trying to get this show together on the hoof very, very quickly. So bear with us. But let's kick off by reminding ourselves what happened today. Now, if you remember Keir Starmer last night, Keir Starmer crawling up Donald Trump's backside in that room by the fireplace, so it's exactly the same scene, except the friendliness was not in the air. Just check this out.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the President for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Count one.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military? And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems, even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly
this. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. But right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's back to you, far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once? This entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you? You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war, you can...
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country's in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No, you've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning. You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
you haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet,
you
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this cabinet.
We gave you, through this stupid president, $350 billion.
You voted
we gave
for
you
your
military equipment, and your men are brave, but they had to use our military.
Yes. What about
if you didn't have our military equipment,
if
you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days. I heard it from Putin. In 3 days. This is something
maybe
new.
Less.
In 2 weeks. Of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this. I tell you.
Just say thank you.
I said a lot of
accept that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on.
I understand, sir.
I think it's very important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the cards.
Thankful.
You're buried there. Your people are dying. You're running low on soldiers. Listen, you're running low on soldiers. It would be a damn good thing. And then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go, and I wanted this. Look. If you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
With guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't with me.
For you what,
that wasn't with me. That was with a guy named Biden, who was not a smart person.
That was with
Obama.
It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets. In fact, the statement is Obama gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. You got to be more thankful, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards.
One more question to Mr. Vice President. I'm sorry, here.
It's going to be a tough deal to make, because the attitudes have to change.
What if Russia breaks ceasefire? What if Russia breaks peace talks? What do you do then? I understand that it's a heated conversation right now.
What are you saying?
She's asking, what if Russia breaks the ceasefire?
What if anything? What if a bomb drops on your head right now? Okay? What if they broke it? I don't know. They broke it with Biden because Biden, they didn't respect him. They didn't respect Obama. They respect me. Let me tell you, Putin went through a hell of a lot with me. He went through a phony witch hunt where they used him and Russia. Russia. You ever hear of that deal? That was a phony Hunter Biden, Joe Biden scam. Hillary Clinton, Shifty Adam Schiff. It was a Democrat scam. And he had to go through that. And he did go through it. We didn't end up in a war. And he went through it. He was accused of all that stuff. He had nothing to do with it. It came out of Hunter Biden's bathroom. It came out of Hunter Biden's bedroom. It was disgusting. And then they said, oh, the laptop from hell was made by Russia, the 51 agents. The whole thing was a scam, and he had to put up with that. He was being accused of all that stuff. All I can say is this. He might have broken deals with Obama and Bush, and he might have broken them with Biden. He did, maybe. Maybe he didn't. I don't know what happened. But he didn't break them with me. He wants to make a deal. I don't know if you can make a deal. The problem is I've empowered you to be a tough guy. And I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. And your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out. But you don't have the cards. But once we sign that deal, you're in a much better position. But you're not acting at all thankful. And that's not a nice thing. I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing. All right, I think we've seen enough. What do you think? Huh? This is going to be great television, I will say that. All right, we'll see what we can do about putting it together. Thanks.
Well, you can't argue with the fact that this is going to be great television. I mean, that was just about the most extraordinary theatre on the political scene I've ever seen.
That was absolutely incredible. As a political, obsessive, that was everything I've ever wanted to watch. I think it is one of those moments in history that will be remembered. It is a mark in history that will be remembered, because I think we're now seeing such a real turn, a real choice between where the world will go now. I think it's a mixed bag between who was right and who was wrong. I think Trump got some of this stuff very wrong. I think Zelensky also got some of this very wrong. I think J.D. Vance, I think he showed himself up here. I think he showed himself to be a little bit of an amateur, this kind of begging Zelensky to say thank you. Well, I'm not being funny, but when your house is on fire, you don't quibble. You don't quibble with the price of water. That's what Franklin Roosevelt said. That is being an ally. That is being a friend. That is being there when you're ally. I think that is the fall. That is fall of America.
The thing is, though, Pete, is yes, America still loosely describes itself as an ally of Ukraine and it wants to help Ukraine, but they're redrawing the relationship here, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
I think that the most telling thing was when Trump said, make a deal now, or you're on your own, we're out. And I think they mean it. I think they mean it. And Zelensky looked very, very shell-shocked. And he did at one point say, we've done this alone.
Yeah.
Well, that's a bit of a stretch. So you're right, in the heat of the moment, I think both sides shouting at each other were sometimes stretching the truth, Zelensky included. But Zelensky has stormed out in a huff. And I'll tell you one thing, I still, of course, sympathise with Ukraine. It's not their fault that Russia invaded them. But we have, over the past 3 years, internationally kind of deified, beatified Zelensky.
We made this point last week.
And I'm frankly glad to see him taken down a peg or two.
I don't know.
I think he needed that.
I don't know whether that's brought him down or bigged him up.
He won't be bigged up when America pulls out,
but I tell you now, that one thing that has shown, and has shown the real difference between how people have looked at this situation. Zelensky is looking at his nation being torn apart, his people being murdered, his homeland just left in cinders, and Donald Trump's talking about playing cards and doing business. This is a very different thing to Zelensky than it is to Trump, and I don't think Trump and the administration have quite recognized that what he's talking about is his country, it's his people that have been slaughtered, and so he's going to be emotional, he's going to want more. Trump is offering a ceasefire. Most Ukrainians don't want to.
Why did he leave? If he wants peace so much, why did he leave?
Because unfortunately sometimes you have to leave the room. Doesn't mean you don't go back to the room. Doesn't mean negotiations are over in any stretch of the imagination. But at some point, when you've hit these roadblocks, you have to walk away to show that he's willing to walk away. Because I think Trump and the administration will be just as shocked at him walking away.
I don't think so. I think they'll be furious. They'll be furious. They'll be furious.
Oh, no, they'll be furious that he has done.
Trump, how can I put this? He has a sort of a kind of prepubescent temper sometimes. And Zelensky is going to be subjected to that now. Trump will take a very tough line on him from now on. And I did think Zelensky looked extremely shell-shocked there.
Yeah, I think he did, because I think the reality of what he was talking about may have just suddenly hit home all at once, I have to admit. But I do think that Zelensky has some very key points. And actually, I know we complained about that reporter chiming in, but it was ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous moment in history.
Let's pause for a second. Whoever that female reporter was who interrupted that fantastic scene, whatever you think, whatever you want to argue happened there, it was, as Pete just said, it was the most remarkable political theatre possibly ever seen on television. And that stupid woman interrupted them. For God's sake.
But she interrupted with at least a good question. What if Russia doesn't keep to the ceasefire? That's the reality, because Trump is betting all cards. So you want to?
Well, he's answered that question many times. His answer would have been, if he bothered to answer it, and I'm glad he didn't. His answer would have been, Putin will keep the ceasefire.
That's not an answer, though. Yeah. That's not an answer to the question, is what if he doesn't?
Yes, I know, but
this is because this goes back to security concerns. It goes back to Zelensky's main point, is that what stops Putin doing this again? That's what Zelensky's after. He wants reassurances that Putin will never wander into Ukraine again, and it requires the Americans on the ground or in some form.
Well, they're not going to do it.
Well, unfortunately, they're going to have to do it.
They won't.
They will.
Why? Why do they have to?
They will because
why do they have to?
Because of the mineral deal. The mineral deal is actually Trump's downfall.
That's why you think Putin will invade Ukraine while America has got those mineral interests?
Well, again, they don't have to invade.
Putin is not...
No, but that's what I'm saying. With the mineral interests, it keeps Putin at bay. However, what he can do is continue to destabilise and continue to wreak havoc without stepping foot into the country.
Well, this may be why the White House just announced that the minerals deal is not signed.
Yes. Oh, they made that very clear, and it's a really good point. But the point is that they need Trump there. Zelensky does, because that keeps the country safe. It's the security by other means.
Yeah. Well, they've made a point of saying it's not signed. So what they're saying there is we don't particularly have any interests right now in Ukraine. But Trump's line, and I think he's right. I don't think, I mean, if Putin did go into Ukraine, and I think that would be the last country he'd actually go into, he'll go into Moldova or somewhere like that. But if he did go into Ukraine, what would be the timeline on that? It's not going to be next week, is it?
Well, this is the thing. It doesn't really have to be next week. All he has to do is keep threatening it. Look at the power of the threat has clearly thrown the world into complete chaos, let alone moving some weapons around or moving some troops around. Look at military exercises done to scare the world.
I would say what's thrown the world into chaos, if you can put it that way, is this new incredibly hard line on the part of America through the prism of Donald Trump and JD Vance.
I don't disagree with that at all. And I sympathise, and I do think Trump is right on a lot of this stuff because of how we've got here. But again, I go back to the point that Trump doesn't recognise that this is a different fight for Zelensky than it is for him and the rest of the world. He's looking at World War III. Zelensky's looking at stopping his people dying and trying to make sure that never happens again. And that's the difference. It's one argument, but they're coming at it from two different angles.
Yeah, he's got one choice now, and that is... Trump will stick him around the table with him and Putin or whoever. The Russia, America, Ukraine, and Trump is clearly going to force a deal. He's forcing a deal. It's going to happen. So, in a way, airy-fairy discussions are kind of outside the realms of relevance in a way. Listen, we're going to break now, and when we come back, we're going to talk, I hope, to Jerome Starkey, the excellent security editor of The Sun, and get his take on it. He has been to Ukraine many times, a serious expert on the entire situation. It'd be fascinating to hear what Jerome has to say, so stay tuned for that. And by the way, loads of calls coming in. We will get to you. We'll pepper calls throughout the show and carry on in the slipstream of these remarkable, extraordinary, astonishing, I use all those superlatives absolutely accurately, scenes that we've just seen in the White House. So stay tuned.
It's absolutely wild, isn't it? You're right. The kind of hand going over and touching Trump's shoulder every now and then in a kind of mock bonhomie, as if they're old best buddies, and the Starmer hasn't said all kinds of ill thought through things in the past that have become a diplomatic problem. What's great about this is I've done it once or twice myself in government, when you go over to the States and you do have these sort of pretend not scripted moments inside a meeting room or something. Your boss is sat there and you're next to him, and
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Please bear with us. We're getting this show together on the hoof due to the remarkable scenes we've just seen in the White House. So we're adapting as we go along, and therefore we won't be able to see the very handsome features of the Sun's excellent security editor, defence editor Jerome Starkey. But he's been kind enough to join us on the phone. Welcome to the show, Jerome.
Hi, Kevin. Thanks for having me on.
A real pleasure. Now, everybody's worried about World War III. It felt like it just broke out in the White House between J.D. Vance, Donald Trump and Zelensky. Well, you've obviously witnessed what happened. What is your take on all of that?
Do you know what? They were extraordinary scenes, and I felt that I think the same emotions that Ukraine's ambassador to the United States felt as she held her head in her hand. It was a mix of disbelief and utter disappointment. President Zelensky, it must be said, you know, what appeared to rise to the bait, as if J.D. Vance and Donald Trump had successfully antagonized him. But that isn't what a meeting like this should be all about. And ultimately, it's just fantastically disappointing after what appeared to be a change in tone from the White House after Macron's visit, after Starmer's visit. It felt like perhaps Trump had turned a corner, and his extraordinarily dizzying pivot to Moscow, which, of course, we've seen over the last 10 days, 2 weeks, had come to an end. But no, this felt like Trump had it in for Zelensky. The vendetta was running hot, and it was ritual humiliation. It felt like playground bullies. J.D. Vance and Donald Trump ganging up against wartime leader Vladimir Zelensky. And I tell you what, I'm talking to you right now from Dnipro, and I've just stepped outside to take the call, and I can hear the air raid sirens are ringing out across the city. That's what this country is going through. This country is at war. I've been in a field hospital in the last 24 hours. I've seen the butchered soldiers coming through. I'm now in one of Ukraine's largest cities where the air raid sirens are ringing out. That is why, you know, Zelensky needs the aid he's asking for. It's not the first time that Zelensky's been abrasive. I can think back of other times. Ben Wallace, former UK Conservative Defence Secretary, who is one of Ukraine's biggest cheerleaders, and just this week described President Putin as a gangster and Russia as a gangster state. Wallace had that unusual outburst where he said that, he said, we're not Amazon. And he got into a little war of words with Zelensky. So, an indication that perhaps occasionally, Zelensky can, in his clamour for more aid and clamour for more support, he can rub people up the wrong way. But I have to say, in the last in the last hour or so, as I've been discussing with Ukrainians their reaction to what's happened in the White House, there has been resounding support for Zelensky. They, people who are not necessarily diehard Zelensky fans actually saying they love him now more than ever. And I've seen on social media one of Ukraine's better-known war correspondents saying that, people are scared of calling out Donald Trump, and actually admiration for Zelensky for daring to do it. Now, of course, we did see Starmer and we did see Macron manage to call out Trump's lies in a slightly more diplomatic way, and I'm sure there will be remorse that Zelensky couldn't perhaps have done it in a more diplomatic way. But let's not forget, Zelensky is the leader of a country at war. It's his brethren, his countrymen who are paying the ultimate price with their lives and with their limbs. And the extraordinary comments from Donald Trump, made from the warmth and comfort and safety of the White House and the luxury of Mar-a-Lago, bear no resemblance to the reality of Russia's bloodbath onslaught. I mean, the suggestion from Trump that Ukraine started this war is preposterous, and the suggestion that Zelensky
that is preposterous.
Is the dictator is preposterous. Yeah, it's really hard to believe.
The White House pointedly, Jerome, has made a thing of immediately announcing after Zelensky stormed out. Don't forget, there was supposed to be a formal press conference around about 9 o'clock British time tonight. He stormed out, and in the slipstream of that storm out, the White House has announced no minerals deal has been signed. Now, I would interpret that as the White House and Trump saying, actually, we don't have any skin in this game, and unless you come to the table and sign the deal, the peace deal that we want you to sign, you're on your own, because we don't have to protect you, because we don't have to protect what we hoped would become our vast mineral reserves. So already things are moving quickly. Do you feel that after what we've just witnessed, that this will potentially force Zelensky to get round the table with America and Russia and have to accept some kind of deal?
President Zelensky wants to get round the table, wants to stay round the table with America, because he's no fool, and he recognizes that America is his most important and powerful ally. The minerals deal actually stems from a suggestion Ukraine made before the US election to try and give America a clearer stake in Ukraine's survival. The fact that America has announced that, they may well be trying to say you're on your own. I suspect it may well also have been Zelensky who didn't want to sign the deal under those sorts of circumstances, looking like he'd been browbeaten into it. The deal stops short of giving Ukraine what it desperately needs, and that is a security guarantee. Ukraine is very aware of its history. When it gained its independence in 1991, it had one of the largest arsenals of nuclear weapons in the world. Now, off the top of my head, I think it was perhaps the third or fourth largest arsenal in the world after that which was on mainland Russia, or sovereign Russia, because, of course, Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union. And just by the nature of its geography and by the nature of its sort of intellectual and engineering capacity, it had manufactured and hosted a lot of the Soviet Union's weapons. But it gave those weapons up in 1994 under an accord under which Britain and America agreed, and Russia agreed to respect and support Ukraine's territorial integrity. Now, when Russia broke that agreement, America and Britain failed really to do anything to uphold it. So that is why Ukraine is acutely aware that peace deals and ceasefires are potentially meaningless without material security guarantees. And that is why, that's exactly what Zelensky has been asking, demanding, perhaps abrasively, but understandably, from America. And Britain and France and NATO have echoed that call, that whilst they are willing to step up and, as Keir Starmer has said, potentially send British forces into this country to try and police or support a ceasefire, ultimately it needs an American backstop. And that's because America is the behemoth within NATO. They are the largest power. American spending on defense is more than double the rest of NATO members combined. Now, NATO members are trying to address that, but that can't change overnight.
Absolutely. Now, you're you're on the scene in Ukraine, and it's early days, obviously, early doors after this bust-up in the White House. But you said you've been sounding out people. Ukrainians must be stunned and shocked by what just happened.
Stunned, shocked, and I think, really disappointed and sad. No one wanted to see this meeting go the way it's gone. Everybody was hoping, or I think largely people were hoping that especially after the meetings, the relatively successful meetings we'd seen from Emmanuel Macron and from Keir Starmer, they were hoping that perhaps Zelensky could surf what appeared to be this wave of goodwill. There are many who would suggest that Donald Trump listens not necessarily to the most important person in the room or the most intelligent person, but rather the last person he has spoken to. And that should have been to Zelensky's advantage, because he spoke, he held those bilateral calls with Vladimir Putin 10 days, 2 weeks ago. I mean, Trump has made some extraordinary comments about how much he trusts Vladimir Putin and how he thinks that Vladimir Putin's word is enough to hang a peace deal on. I've been
good luck with that.
Well, indeed. I mean, it is extraordinary. And people here, as I told you, I was in a field hospital less than 24 hours ago where the maimed wounded soldiers were being brought in from the front lines. And some of the medics I spoke to were, trying to hope that perhaps Trump's remarks were part of a grand strategy, evidence that perhaps he is the master deal maker. But other people just said it felt like an utter betrayal. And yet all of that topsy-turvy geopolitics, the emotions, the turmoil of emotions that these Ukrainians are clearly feeling, they have no choice but to carry on doing what they're doing. The medics can't down scalpels in the middle of a war as the wounded soldiers are still being brought into their field hospital. They have to carry on. And of course, that is what's going to happen. But nonetheless, they were reeling already, and they're reeling even more this evening.
Well, Jerome, thanks so much for sparing the time to talk to us. Can we expect a dispatch from you in the Sun tomorrow or over the next couple of days?
100%. I urge all of your viewers to buy tomorrow's Sun. Harry Cole, our political editor, is in Washington, D.C. He's been watching this up close at the White House, and I've been in that field hospital. You're really seeing the reality of what this conflict's like for the people who are, giving their lives for the defence of their country.
Well, Jerome, keep up the great work, and thank you once again so much for talking to us. That's the brilliant Jerome Starkey, the defence correspondent he's actually the defence editor. Let's give him his title. Says correspondent here. He's a lot more important than that. No, he really is. He's a real expert, and he's actually there in Ukraine.
Boots on the ground.
And there you have it, folks. The Ukrainians shocked and stunned by what they see as Trump's betrayal. The narrative coming out of the White House just now was quite clearly what we kind of have been experiencing from Trump for the last couple of weeks, that he seems to be favouring Russia and disfavouring Ukraine. Let me know what you think about that. I've got lots of calls. I will get to you. We all need to talk about this. 0344 499 1000. We'll go to break now. When we come back, we're going to talk to our friend Greg Swenson, the American here, who is from the Republican Overseas Organisation here in London. We'll get his take on it. And we're trying to get as many guests and experts as we can on this. So stay tuned for this unfolding programme as it develops. Stay tuned. We'll be back in a minute.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. We're going to go to Greg Swenson in just a second. He's hanging on the line. But Vladimir Zelensky has just tweeted this, having stormed out of the White House. Thank you, America. Thank you for your support. Thank you for this visit. Thank you, POTUS, the President of the United States, that means Donald Trump, Congress, and the American people. Ukraine needs just and lasting peace, and we are working exactly for that. I do believe here, if you just bear with me, I've also got Donald Trump has just posted as well. Bear with me. See, this is TV verite. This is happening live, folks. Here we go. This is President Donald Trump. I love the diplomatic language coming out here. We had a very meaningful meeting. That's one word for it. Right. We had a very meaningful meeting in the White House today. Much was learned that could never be understood without conversation under such fire and pressure. It's amazing what comes out through emotion. And I have determined that President Zelensky is not ready for peace if America is involved, because he feels our involvement gives him a big advantage in negotiations. I don't want advantage, I want peace. He disrespected the United States of America in its cherished Oval Office. He can come back when he is ready for peace. That is extraordinary. I mean, basically, that is what in Britain we would call the two-finger salute. In America, the one-fingered salute. Well, let's go. I'll get Pete's reaction in just a second, but let's go straight over to our friend Greg Swenson from the Republican Overseas Organisation here in London. Greg, what did they say? What do they say? May we live in interesting times. Oh, my God, what did you make of that?
It's unbelievable, Kevin. Last night I was on your show for an hour talking about Keir Starmer, and it was very diplomatic, and they were very friendly to each other. I think we saw much of the same on Monday with Macron. And I thought it would be a quiet end to a busy week. Maybe Zelensky and Trump even sign something, or at least make a commitment to this minerals and rare earth element deal. And wow, that just blew up. And I think Zelensky might have just blown himself up. Maybe the tweet that you just read, Kevin, will be a bit of a kiss and make up. He said thank you, which is reassuring. He said thank you several times in that X post. But I think President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance were absolutely in the right. And I think Zelensky took some blows, and he deserved all of them.
Yeah, I'm sort of torn a bit here. I do feel sorry for Ukraine and Zelensky, but over the past 3 years, I think he has been raised onto a pedestal, a sort of beatification process, and I'm quite pleased to see him knocked off that. That said, I think I don't want Ukraine to be left all on its own.
No, that
seems to be what Trump is threatening now.
No, I mean, of course he'll threaten that, but I think it's more likely that Zelensky has to go, or he turns around and begs for mercy here. I mean, this was really outrageous what he did with his T-shirt, with the khaki T-shirt, sitting in the White House, completely disrespectful. And J.D. Vance pointed it out and said, you're sitting here, and how about thank you? And so at least in the car ride to the airport, he's decided to say thank you a few times. So, maybe they can kiss and make up here, but I just thought it was outrageous. And this has nothing to do with the people of Ukraine. I think President Trump has always had a soft spot for the people. And he said it several times today. He wants peace. It sickens him that 20-year-old boys are coming home in body bags. And so I think it's important that Zelensky was essentially slapped around a little bit When I first heard about it, I was kind of shocked. I didn't expect it. But this is classic
We were
Trump.
all a bit shocked. That's one thing we can all agree on.
Yes, true. But I think Zelensky walked into the Oval Office, guns a-blazing, and I think that was a huge mistake. I don't know what he's thinking. He should be looking after his people. Making a deal not only would bring a deal on critical minerals, and we talked about it last night, not only would it bring peace, or at least a ceasefire, but it would bring prosperity to his people.
Yeah,
that's what's so outrageous about this.
Well, I was just talking to Jerome Starkey, the defense editor of The Sun. He's actually in Ukraine at the moment. He's saying that Ukrainians are stunned and shocked by this development. But what I informed him, and I don't know if you know this yet, and I think this is very significant, within minutes of Zelensky storming out, the White House announced no minerals deal has been signed. Now, we know what the implications of that. Does it not worry you, or should we all be worried about the prospect of Ukraine and presumably the European countries carrying on this war without the aid of America? I mean, as Donald Trump said, you are gambling with World War III. I mean, if America pulls its support out, perhaps World War III does edge a little closer. Do we have to worry about that?
No, I don't think so. Because World War III would involve American nuclear missiles and Russian nuclear missiles. Nobody wants that. That's not going to happen. But the stalemate has been happening for 3 years. And I think that's what people have to understand. And I think that's what President Trump is so troubled about, is that with all this American support and European support, not as much with military or weapons and ammunition, but with humanitarian support, the combined effort of the Europeans and the U.S. has just the end game right now is stalemate. And so whatever's been tried the last 3 years, Kevin, is not working. And this will just go on for years. And so I think, the disruptive, aggressive attitude of President Trump will actually fix this. I mean, today was to say the least, a speed bump in that process. Understatement of the
little
year.
Hurdle. Yeah.
I mean, but look, I heard one comment earlier that maybe this means that peace in this conflict will only come if Zelensky is gone. I don't know, that's the only outcome, but surely this was not a good moment today until I heard what you just read out, Kevin, these apologetic or at least grateful tweets from Zelensky.
From Zelensky. No backing down on Donald's part.
No, of course not. But also I didn't hear any gratefulness, in the Oval Office, and I'm so glad that J.D. Vance pointed that out.
I mean, where do we go from here? I mean, Zelensky, I think, is he coming back via London or something? I mean, will Starmer, his alleged best friend, call Trump tomorrow? Because, I mean, this has completely changed the dial, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, for now, but I think this minerals deal should still be considered, and I think that's important to, again, not just for the support of the Americans, and that will inspire President Trump to do that, but also it's good for the Ukrainian people. There's got to be some rebuilding there, and that's a 10-year project. That's not just a quick trade, trading some minerals that are available for sale. I mean, this is a long-term development process. They've got the largest lithium deposits in Europe. They have the second largest amount of natural gas in Europe. This is an underdeveloped country that is ripe for Western development. And so the sooner that Zelensky kisses and makes up or just resigns, I think the better, because there's great hope for Ukraine if they can either, as I said, get Zelensky out of the way, or he starts being a little bit more grateful and a little bit more reasonable and trying to look out for his people and not just trying to be this war hero guy with the khaki T-shirt.
Do you fear, or what's your take? I mean, the narrative, Trump's rhetoric and J.D. Vance, it seems to be so far, I mean, they could be, just being strategic, setting the pieces in place for some kind of a deal. But the rhetoric so far does seem to be Trump favouring Russia over Ukraine. His love for Putin is worrying a lot of, or his alleged love for Putin is worrying a lot of people. What do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think the key word is alleged, because he doesn't have love for Putin. He just wants to keep his friends close and his enemies closer. You know that from the great Godfather movie, or Godfather Part 2. Sorry. But look, I think, Trump he mentioned it in the press conference. He mentioned sending Javelin missiles to Ukraine. Obama and Biden were sending blankets and MREs to an air base in Poland. I think we talked about it last night. He sanctioned Nord Stream 2. He had 300 Russian mercenary soldiers killed in Syria. This is a president who stood up to Putin. It doesn't matter what he says. He's just trying to end this thing. Yeah. And more importantly, keep Russia away from China. This is a Nixon and Kissinger moment from the 70s, when Nixon went over to China because he was afraid if they partnered up with the Soviet Union, the two of them would be quite powerful. Yeah. And this is a moment where we can't mess around, with rhetoric too much. This is not Trump loving Putin, not at all. He doesn't trust Putin. He might think that Putin will be more obedient if, with Trump in the White House, which is true, because look what happened in the Biden 4 years. None of these wars, none of these invasions happened under Trump. They happened first with Crimea in 2014 under Obama and Biden, and then of course under Biden in 2022. Trump was very aggressive against Putin. And as you know, Biden took off the sanctions on Nord Stream the first month in office. So, this is apples and oranges. And I think, being tough against Putin, there's a good time for that. And then there's a time to negotiate and try to bring some peace. And by the way, as we talked about last night, having a 10-year development plan in Ukraine, where the U.S. is investing and bringing management, technique and skills, and good for the Ukrainian people, good for the U.S., but more importantly, it gives a security element to Ukraine. If the U.S. there's $1 trillion worth of assets in Ukraine between natural gas and critical minerals. So that's really important. And I think you could almost assume there'll be some military or defense and security interest in protecting those assets.
Yeah, that's if they do. But interestingly, they made a point of saying we haven't signed a deal. So they don't have any skin in the game as things stand. Greg, I know you're busy. I know you're moving house. So thank you for interrupting.
You can see the empty one behind me.
Yeah, I was echoing through your empty apartment. So thank you very much for sparing the time to talk to us. Always a pleasure. That's Greg Swenson, chair of the Republican Overseas Organisation here in London. Pete Barnes shaking his head a lot throughout that. We've got to go to break now, and we'll find out why Pete was shaking his head afterwards.
I don't like the way that he's been leading the country, and I didn't particularly admire him much as leader of the opposition. But I'll tell you what, we do need a strong relationship with the United States, and whatever he's daftly said about presidential candidates in the past, it's good that he's got over his own well, how can I put it, his own personal views, and is representing us in
but is there not also a reflective moment on that? And I take your point, and I understand that, you know, if it's Team Britain that we're on,
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
After the 8 o'clock news, we're going to be joined by the excellent social commentator, Dr. Rakib Ehsan, one of my favourite pundits. He'll be on for half an hour from 8. We'll ask him about this, and that will give us the chance, Pete, to talk about... So I really think we're going to squeeze in a couple of the other stories, if only for 10 minutes, because there's some big stories around today. 850,000 legal migrants were given long-term visas over the past year. 850,000, best part of 1 million. It's out of control.
I'm going to say the one thing you have to watch now is because there's such a big story happening, the government will drop all these little stories that are very embarrassing for them.
Yeah, this is a good day.
It's what they used to call take out the trash day.
Yeah, a good day for bad news. Yeah, to bury bad news. Right, Pete, you were shaking your head there. Now, just to preface what you have to say, Mike Tomlinson from Cheshire has sent me a tweet and a message. I appreciate it, Mike, but I think you're wrong here, but it's an interesting message. He said Zelensky's thank yous on his tweet are sarcasm.
Agreed.
Something the Americans do not understand.
100% agree.
I don't think it's that.
I 100% agree with that. I think that was Zelensky saying, I'm going to say thank you, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and I'm still not going to come back to the White House. You know, Zelensky isn't backing down here. You know, he may have...
well, America will pull out.
I don't think they will. I mean, Greg has just said the exact same thing. Trump's threat, according to Greg, was an empty threat. He's just basically admitted that, you know, that Trump will not, and the Americans will not pull out of this. So
he's going to demand peace.
No,
he's got too much at stake. He's staked his whole reputation on forcing through a peace.
Yeah.
He's got to get them round the table.
Yeah, he's got to get them round the table. But the thing that Trump's got wrong is that peace doesn't mean his way. That's two different things. There's the Trump getting his way is not the only way to get peace. One thing that we have to remember, and I go back to this point, Zelensky is a wartime president. Listen to what Jerome was saying on the ground. These people aren't giving in. When this happened to Britain in World War II, Winston Churchill got up in Parliament and gave one of the most rousing speeches. It was to fight them on the beaches speech. That was about Britain on the cusp.
Can't see Starmer doing that.
No. But what I'm saying is,
fight them on the sand.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is that is a country, we were in this exact same situation and we fought on because we believed in it, and we wouldn't give up our country to a fascist dictator. We wouldn't give up. So why are we expecting Zelensky just to roll over and have his belly tickled?
Well, the odds were a little bit more. The odds were slightly more even, weren't they? I mean, this is Ukraine against Russia.
Well, again, I don't think it really matters.
This is David and Goliath, isn't it?
But then you side with David. Yeah. Well, I don't understand why on earth we're talking about this, because...
Well, no, I fear for David is what I do.
But then if you fear for him, you back him up.
That he's going to get crushed. Well, David isn't going to do very well if he doesn't have the help of America.
But again, as we've just said, we've just heard, that is an empty threat.
You sure?
I think in some way they'll probably withhold funding in some way or another, but the idea that they're just going to let this happen, there's no way. Because go back to the minerals deal.
I admire your faith.
No, the minerals deal is really what this is about, because America needs that just as much as Ukraine do.
The minerals deal is overrated.
No. That's what this is really about.
It'll take them 10 to 15 years to get any of those minerals out.
10 to 15 years in the
and it will cost them a fortune. In a lot of ways, this mineral deal is kind of totemic.
I disagree massively.
Well, in 10, 15 years they may have something, but it isn't like gold tomorrow for
it's not
America.
gold tomorrow, but this is the point. This is
titanium and lithium, isn't it?
But the point is, well, if you look at what China's been doing, they've been doing this for the last 20 years. If it's not important, why have China been doing it?
Yeah.
We're so
Ukraine's
slow to
not one of the great mineral countries.
No, but it's one that they could have a huge influence over, because, as Greg said, it is an underdeveloped country. America could have run the board on this, and I think that Zelensky knows that, and that's why he offered it up in the first place, saying, look, you get this, you run the board. And I think Trump has got this. I think Trump has miscalculated on that one.
Well, you wait and see, because in The Art of the Deal, one of the main tenets of The Art of the Deal, Donald Trump's book about how to make a deal, his first golden rule is you have to be prepared to walk away.
And that works on both sides of the table.
Good luck, Zelensky, walking away from America. His problem will be if America walks away from him. And then it'll be our problem. It'll be the rest of Europe's problem as well. In the words of the song, folks, there may be trouble ahead. When we come back, as I said earlier, we'll be joined by the excellent Dr. Rakib Asen. We'll get his take on that, and we'll try and mention a few of the other big stories that have been happening today. So stay tuned. Lots still to come.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Before we go to Dr. Rakib Asen, let me ask you, get on the phone. We will get you involved in this kind of historic show fairly soon. What do you feel? Is Trump siding with Russia? And is that right? Is he right to be quite so aggressive towards Zelensky? Clearly, there's no love lost between the White House and President Zelensky. I think the White House want him gone. They want a new president, a new leader for Ukraine. And I'd like to know what you think about that. 03444991000. Actually, in about half an hour, it'll be all over to you, so we'll get you all on the phone. I've got loads and loads of messages here as well. Well, first of all, a warm welcome to the show to author and social commentator Dr. Rakib Ehsan. Rakib, of course, we had you lined up to talk about all sorts of other issues, but got to get your take on what we've just witnessed in the White House, where you think that massive row leaves the world, and what might happen now?
Well, Kevin, absolutely remarkable scene, White House. But in my view, and not a complete surprise, it is very rare to see world leaders bickering in public the way they did there. President Trump, Vice President Vance, and President Zelensky. But it's very clear here that the personalities involved don't really like one another. And I think there's been rising tensions. President Trump looks at the Russia-Ukraine conflict very differently to President Zelensky. And there's also been tensions in terms of this minerals deal, which, to my understanding, has yet to be finalised.
Well, yeah, just to interrupt you there, the White House made a big point after Zelensky stormed out, cancelled tonight's press conference in a huff. The White House made a big point of revealing afterwards, in terms of the mineral deal, no deal has been signed. So they're trying to emphasise, don't make the mistake of thinking we have any skin in this game.
No, absolutely. And I think ultimately there's frustrations on both sides. The President Zelensky seems to be under the impression that President Trump, in a way, is ignoring how this conflict started. I think he made the point there in that exchange that this ultimately started with a full-scale invasion of Ukraine by the Kremlin. But I think from President Trump's remarks, I think there's a sense that he feels that President Zelensky's been quite ungrateful in terms of the level of American support that's been provided to Ukraine over the course of the conflict. So I think here you have two personalities who don't truly like one another. And I suspect that if you actually ask President Trump, who do you actually admire as a personality, as the personality traits and how they come across, I think if he was being honest, perhaps he'd say that he probably takes more of a liking to President Putin over President Zelensky.
Yeah, I suspect also he likes the fact that Putin wears a suit when he meets him, and Zelensky turns up like some kind of student on a Saturday day off or something. But I suppose that is his style. I mean, do you believe that Trump is prepared to literally pull out unless Zelensky signs some kind of peace deal?
Well, I think one thing that we know about President Trump is that he's a very unpredictable character. That's the truth of it. And there's a volatility that comes with his approach to politics and indeed geopolitics. I think one thing for me that there's been a huge shift in terms of the American positioning in regards to Russia-Ukraine from the Biden-Harris administration to the Trump-Vance administration. And I think that Vice President Vance also had some very strong words there for President Zelensky, saying that he was trying to present his case in an aggressive or ungrateful way in front of the American media. So I think there'll be many people across the world looking at that thinking this is very rare. It's quite remarkable this has happened. But I think that if the Kremlin is looking at that exchange, I think they'll welcome it.
Yeah. We seem to have lost Rakib there. Has he frozen? Can you hear me, Rakib?
Well, I can hear you all.
Okay, right. You're moving again. Do you think, to play devil's advocate, to perhaps take Trump's side, do you think that Zelensky does exude a certain sense of entitlement? At one point, he said, as J.D. Vance attacked him and said, "You've never said thank you," and Trump said, "We've given you $350 billion. He sort of snapped back and said, "We've done this alone. We're doing this alone." Well, that's a bit of an exaggeration, isn't it?
No, that's a huge exaggeration. But I'll make this point, Kevin. You're having it is 2-on-1, honest, and in that two, President Vance, President Trump and Vice President Vance, they're language, while President Zelensky is looking to communicate in English, which is not his first language. So I think there's an unfairness there. But I think that would be my view that if you look at that discussion over, I'd like to see world leaders bickering in such a way.
It was extraordinary. I've never seen anything like it. And with Pete Barnes, a seasoned political campaigner, he's never seen anything like it. Listen, Rakib, this is quite a bad line. We've just about made it so far. So we'll go to break now, and we'll reconnect with you a bit more solidly and continue this discussion after these messages.
I said what I said, which is that we do have, of course, a special relationship with our friends in the UK and also with some of our European allies, but we also know that there have been infringements on free speech that actually affect not just the British. Of course, what the British do in their own country is up to them, but also affect American technology companies and, by extension, American citizens.
We've had free speech for a very, very long time in the United Kingdom, and it will last for a very, very long time. Well, no, I mean, certainly we wouldn't want to reach across US citizens, and we don't, and that's absolutely right.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. We're still with Dr. Rakib Ehsan, author and social commentator. I think we've got a better line now, Rakib. Well, let's quickly go through these other stories that I really wanted to talk to you about specifically. We'll come back, folks, by the way, obviously, to the explosive events we've seen in the White House fairly soon. But I think this warrants discussion. The BBC has issued this grovelling apology now, saying serious mistakes were made in the making of this documentary called Gaza: How to Survive a War Zone. This was foisted on viewers, as you know, as a piece of impartial journalism. They neglected to tell the audience that the narrator, a 13-year-old kid, was the son of a senior Hamas official. They later apologised and said, put a trigger on the top, so beware. People like me, this time last week, saying that's not enough. And so last Friday, they finally pulled it down. Yesterday, I think it was, or was it the day before, a bunch of 500 lovies led by Gary Lineker called for the restoration of this, and I quote, essential piece of journalism. It wasn't journalism, and it certainly wasn't essential. It was propaganda. It was pro-Palestinian propaganda. Now, the extraordinary development now, Rakib, is that the state broadcaster is being investigated by anti-terrorist police. Now, it's not quite an investigation, but they are investigating the situation to see whether or not the law has been broken here, because make no mistake, this documentary cost £400,000, and some of that money has gone to the kid and his father, so BBC licence fee payers' money, the state broadcaster's money, has ended up in the pockets of Hamas, and that is illegal. This, even by the BBC's standards, this is a seriously dangerous situation, isn't it?
Oh, Kevin, it's a major cock-up. There's no two ways about it. And it just seems like every time there's a BBC controversy, it seems to be getting worse and worse. And I think this is the point. We can have different views on what's going on in the Middle East, on the Israel-Palestine conflict. But the reality is we're talking about our national public broadcaster, and Hamas is a proscribed terrorist organisation in the UK. And I think that there's very serious problems here with this documentary. And I do believe that the BBC has apologised for this.
Oh, hugely. As I say, yes, last night. They already apologised this time last week, but didn't pull the documentary down from the iPlayer. That has now been done.
And now they have.
Yeah, yesterday, meanwhile, with the Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy demanding talks with the Director General, what went wrong.
Samir Shah, yeah.
Yeah, even Labour are furious about this, and they love the BBC. But now, yesterday, last night, the BBC, the press love to call apologies, all apologies in the newspapers are grovelling, but this one really is. They said serious mistakes were made. So it's more than apology, it is an admission of an egregious error.
Absolutely, and I think I've made this point. Where was the due diligence? Why wasn't the appropriate checks made over the course of this documentary and then the airing of this documentary? It's totally remarkable that this was allowed to take place. And I think it does undermine the BBC's credibility. And I think, crucially, what we expect from the BBC, we want on-the-ground reporting of conflicts across the world. That's the BBC's bread and butter, really. It should be the BBC's bread and butter as a national public broadcaster. But here, there's been a major misstep. And of course, there has to be an investigation. And there'll be a variety of state agencies involved in that, largely because Hamas, as I've said before, is a proscribed terrorist organisation. Whatever anyone's opinion is on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, that is the reality in the UK.
Indeed. And I'm afraid that this documentary is almost, if you like, the culmination of what is it now, a year and a half or so of BBC reporting on the Gaza conflict, which has been outrageously, disgracefully pro-Palestine and anti-Israel. A couple of months ago, an independent body of 1,500 barristers, not just members of the public, compiled, I think it was more than 1,500 examples of clear, serious bias against Israel. Frankly, Rakib, I'm not the first to say this, but Julia Hartley-Brewer said it the other day. She just came out and said it. The BBC is looking like an anti-Semitic organisation.
Well, I think here you'll get people from different sides offering very different perspectives on the BBC and the way it's reported when it comes to the Israel-Palestine conflict. But I have to say, with this particular episode, if there were people who are accusing the BBC of adopting a lopsided position in regards to the conflict, this documentary has given them a great deal of ammunition, in my view.
Exactly right. And you talked about due diligence, the due diligence that should have been shown before this ever got anywhere near being screened. I mean, it's sort of natural process. Who is this kid?
Absolutely.
You know, who's in
His
it?
background, does he have any political ties? Indeed, has any familial ties with Hamas? By the way, I would have thought those are basic checks.
Exactly. Now, when they finally, shamefacedly, pulled this documentary down from the iPlayer last Friday, because people like me were screaming, "You've got to do this." You know, they never do this stuff easily, do they? They always have a halo and they think, "Oh, we can't do any wrong with the BBC." When they made this apology, they said, "We've taken it down to show for some due diligence." What you mean after you've screened it? You should have shown the due diligence before you screened it. And by the way, even in this aforementioned grovelling apology yesterday, they said, we hereby pledge never to show this documentary again in its current form. Are you joking? This has to be thrown into the dustbin, onto the cutting room floor, and never see the light of day again. It shamed the BBC, didn't it?
Well, I mean, it's the first time I've heard of this post-production, post-airing due diligence.
It's weird, isn't it?
It usually happens a fair bit earlier than that. I think it's just completely remarkable. And I think there's many people who work within the BBC, they have this mindset that there's moral superiority that they possess. But time and again, this is not just about being morally questionable. This is rank incompetence as well. There's no two ways about it. And I think you have to ask, why is there this incompetence and why was this allowed to happen? And I think naturally people will say it's because there's a great deal of prejudice within the BBC.
Exactly.
And there's far too many people within the institution who just cannot be trusted to approach, admittedly, very sensitive matters of geopolitics in a professional manner.
Indeed, and you're right. I think it's a mixture of incompetence and inherent prejudice that most people at the BBC, not all of them, but a lot of people at the BBC will take a look at that incredibly pro-Palestine documentary and say, that looks like the truth to me, because they'll believe anything that is anti-Israel, and there is the problem. And I do think that this time they've crossed the line. I think, I don't like calling for heads to roll, but I think someone's got to pay the price for this, and it may well be the head of news, Deborah Turnus, a well-known left-winger. She may well have to walk the plank on this, I suspect. But it's the BBC, so what will probably happen, as always happens at the BBC when some huge mistake is made, deputy heads roll. But we'll wait and see what happens there. But I do think this time... by the way, these 500 lefties, lovies who signed this documentary, who signed this important piece of journalism must be restored. Essential. As I said earlier, it's neither essential nor journalism. It's blatant disgraceful propaganda, and those people should hang their heads in shame for calling for its restoration. Let's move on, if we can, Rakib. I want to talk about judges. We've got immigration judges. Pete Barnes and I may well try and squeeze in a little discussion of the latest immigration statistics, migration statistics, which are pretty shocking. We've now got a record 108,000 asylum seekers in the country waiting for a decision, and that decision will be, of course, you can stay, because that always is the decision. And 850,000 long-term visas, it turns out, were handed out over the last year to migrants, to legal migrants. So while we're obviously concentrating on massive storage in the White House and all that, the migrant crisis continues apace. And we've witnessed over the last month or so, couple of months or so, more and more of these bizarre decisions by the immigration tribunal judges. You know, more and more paedophiles, jailed paedophiles, when they finish their sentence, foreign paedophiles, not being deported because a immigration judge will say, under the terms of the European Convention of Human Rights, they have a right to a family life. Their family is here in Britain, so we won't deport them. Then we got that other judge, a guy called Hugo Norton-Taylor. Unsurprisingly, they're always called things like that, aren't they? Who basically ruled that all 2 million Palestinians have the right to settle in Britain. A ludicrous decision. Now, one of these judges making this kind of decision is someone called Sarah Pinder. She recently, I remember doing this story last week, she ruled that a jailed Zimbabwean paedophile could stay because of that reason, because he had a family here. You know, and when they make this decision, they basically endanger British kids, don't they? And also, this is the same judge, Sarah Pinder, who ruled that a guy who turned up from Sudan recently, who they reckon was at least 23 years old, that sounds like a conservative estimate. He was balding, receding hairline, bit like yours, Rakib, if I may say so.
I'm 23 as well.
Yeah. No. According to Sarah Pinder, you're about 6 years old. No, seriously, he was balding, receding hairline, he had wrinkles, crow feet, and had a huge sort of chest out there, like a bodybuilder. And the Home Office said, he came and said, I'm a child. I'm under 16. And the Home Office said, no, you're not. That's ridiculous. Sarah Pinder rejected the Home Office decision and said, this is a child. OK, ridiculous decision. Two ridiculous decisions. Sarah Pinder, it turns out, is a long-time writer for a website called Free Movement. And she described detention centres as abhorrent. She's an open border fanatic. Also, the Hugo Norton-Taylor I mentioned just now, he is the son of veteran Guardian lefty journalist Richard Norton-Taylor, he was obsessively anti-Israel and posts regularly that the IDF is guilty of genocide. So we have a lot to worry about these judges. Frankly, they're prejudiced. They're prejudiced against Britain and for their left-wing causes. They're Guardian readers, basically. And this is what worries me. We can't do anything about it. In this country, we have no recourse to judges. We cannot sack them. We cannot punish them. We cannot even reprimand them. We give them godlike status to do what the hell they like. And I think we've reached a critical mass with this situation. What we need to do is be given the ability to tell these judges, you carry on making these decisions and you're fired. But we can't do that. We've got a problem here, haven't we, Rakib?
Oh, we've got a very huge problem, and it's a very serious problem of judicial activism. That's what we have. And I think it's absolutely remarkable where you have people within what call the sort of immigration-related judiciary writing for websites called Free Movement. I think it's absolutely correct to say that is open borders fanaticism there. And I think what you see all too often is that there's far too many British judges, they ultimately rule in favour of foreign criminals, dangerous individuals. They ultimately prioritise their rights over the protection and safety of the law-abiding British public. There are countless cases of that. And I think what all of this does, it undermines public confidence in the judiciary, in the court system. And I think that when you're really looking at, I think you referred to the right to family life there, Kevin, which is Article 8.
Yes, Article 8,
Article 8 of the European Convention of Human Rights. But what about the protection of British families, especially British families with young children? You're talking about a foreign paedophile in that particular case. And I think it's just absolutely remarkable that we have a situation, we ultimately have a judiciary, which in my view, it's overly prejudiced. What you want judges to interpret the laws in a balanced manner. But I have to say that if you want them to gravitate towards a particular position, you want them to err on the side of caution and ultimately prioritising the security of the British public. And all too often they rule in a way which contradicts that.
Yeah, and only recently, if you remember, in a rare moment of harmony, Kemi Badenoch and Keir Starmer agreed that this guy, Hugo Norton-Taylor's decision to use the law specifically created for Ukrainian refugees to allow all 2 million Palestinians to settle in Britain just if they fancy it, that we won't be able to stop them. Both Starmer and Badenoch agreed that this was ridiculous and we had to close this loophole. And the Lady Chief Justice, Susan Carr, stepped up and basically said, how dare they criticise the independent judiciary? So, as I said to, she complained that politicians in the House of Commons shouldn't be allowed to do it. And I made it pretty clear to her on this show, other fellow presenters did as well, not only are we allowed to criticise you, Susan, in the House of Commons, we're allowed to do so outside the House of Commons as well. And Hugo Taylor's decision was moronic, and you saying that no one must be allowed to discuss judges' decisions is also moronic. We need to change the system with judges. We need recourse. The people need power over judges. And if necessary, maybe the American system, whereby we elect them and they worry that if they make ludicrous decisions that annoy the people, like, oh, hello, paedophiles, you can all stay, they'll lose their jobs. We need some power over our judges. We need to do something about this pretty fast, don't you think?
Well, the current framework is not fit for purpose. That's absolutely clear. But I think, Kevin, it's more than moronic. What you're referring to is actually deeply authoritarian.
Yes.
You can't even question these hugely questionable judicial decisions. And I think if you're talking about the amount of people that can be granted asylum and refugee status in the UK and be allowed to resettle in the UK, that should be made by democratically elected politicians, in my view. I think that the idea that a judge would step into that kind of space and make that kind of ruling is a very clear form of judicial overreach. And it's taken no consideration in terms of security, social cohesion, availability of services. None of that is being taken into consideration. So, people want to talk about the judiciary being the subject of public respect, but then you have to make decisions which can command public respect as well. And all too often you see decisions which are not in the interests of British public safety, but they're hugely unprofessional and they have serious implications when it comes to matters of security and cohesion.
Here's an interesting point, Rakib. Great to have you on the show, as always. Now, in my early days on Fleet Street, that was back in the 19th century, about 1870, something like that. No, seriously, my early days on Fleet Street, judges were... First of all, they were always figures of fun. We had great fun with judges, but they were, most of them were sort of right of Genghis Khan. I mean, they were extremely right-wing, and they represented, if you like, the kind of golf club shires section of society, the Tory elite, and that they're always getting criticised for that. But now, what I find very strange is the judiciary are left-wing. They're always left-wing, and I think that represents or indicates that there's been a societal shift, that the establishment used to be right-wing, very right-wing, and it is the establishment now is left-wing. The Guardian loves to say, we're anti-establishment. No, no, no. People like me are anti-establishment. The Guardian and these judges, they are the new left, they are the new establishment, aren't they?
No, absolutely. And I think that you just make such a good point there, where it's almost the sort of roles are reversed in a sense, and the dynamics have been reversed in terms of what you're talking about there. Back in the day, you might describe the British judiciary as being the sort of old-fashioned conservative elite, if you could call it that. But now, if you look at the judiciary, there's a great deal of what I'd call liberal left activism. Indeed, open borders activism as well, and maybe in a previous era, judges are on the side of caution, being more security oriented. Well, now there's a great talk within the judiciary about rehabilitation, giving people a second chance, the right to family life for dangerous foreign criminals. We live in very different times now.
Yeah, and also that shift from right to left in terms of the establishment, that's reflected in the police as well. The police basically enforce a left-wing ideology now, don't they?
No, and I think that's interesting that maybe back in the day, if you talked about anti-establishment politics, that was more traditionally associated with the left.
Yeah.
I think that now in modern British politics, if you look at sort of anti-establishment politics, really rallying against Parliament, the court system, and indeed the police, there's very serious concern among those who may well identify themselves as right-wing. So there's been very serious social, political, and indeed cultural shifts which have taken place in Britain.
It'd be nice if just people could be impartial, wouldn't it? I'll just leave you with a couple of stories. Our favourite judge in my early days on Fleet Street was a guy called Lord Denham, who was like the epitome of a sort of highfalutin judge cut off from the rest of society. And there was some case involving Paul Gascoigne, the footballer, Gazza. And so the barrister, the defence barrister or prosecution was sort of started talking about, what happened was Gazza did this, and Lord Denham went, excuse me, what is Gaza? And he did exactly the same with a case involving, the BBC soap EastEnders. And the case had been going on for 2 days. A lawyer friend of mine was involved, and he said to me, after 2 days, we realised that he didn't know what EastEnders was. So those days are gone. We've got a new kind of judge in town. Indeed. I think I prefer the Lord Denham days, but Rakib, excellent to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Talk again soon. That's Dr. Rakib Ahsan, author and social commentator. He's right, though, isn't he? We've got a problem with our judges.
100%, but it goes back to the point of the captured academy. So basically, the universities became so left-wing, so that what they were pumping out into society was the professionalism, the professional class became left-wing.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Good point.
So they always. So this is why when
these are the graduates
the consequence
of left-wing university.
This is what we're living through. So when we talk about woke on university campuses, it is so important because that bleeds into society. That was the entire point of this kind of political correctness movement that became woke. It was that they could take over institutions without the need for elections because they had got the people in those organisations. And that is what we're seeing in the police, in schools, in the judiciary, in politics, even in the corporate world we see it. And that's the point. This was fed into them like kind of a drip fed.
And it carries on now.
Carries on now.
Yeah.
And that's where it comes from. That is where it's always come from.
Yeah, when I was at university, it was in the very revolutionary days, and all the sociology students, all with their donkey jackets like this, and they were always burning books.
Yeah.
And, and I used to try and think I should be an activist as I walked past them on my way to see Fulham.
Look at every dictator in it. Every dictator, every kind of tyrant went after education first.
Yeah.
Because you cement that into the into the population.
Well, listen, good point, Pete, there. We're going to go to break now. We're going to take your calls next. We just diverted for a little while there. But back to Zelensky, back to Donald Trump, back to those extraordinary scenes in the White House. So get on the phone, give us your take on it. Well, let's talk. It's good to talk on Talk. Stay tuned. Back in a mo.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, guys. Straight to the phones in just a little while. Well, actually, about 30 seconds. But just to preface that, got an interesting message from David. He said Starmer should keep out of this. Zelensky won't be president by next week. I think that's optimistic or probably a bit OTT. Someone else who understands the situation will be heading up Ukraine and heading to Washington with many thanks, and we want peace. I suspect that's probably premature. But what is interesting, Pete Barnes just made this point. Fascinating, no reaction yet from the British Prime Minister.
Complete radio silence from pretty much every major government in Europe or the UN. Everybody has not said a word yet.
It's funny, isn't it?
No one has said anything. Which is
well, they're
actually,
probably like us, they're stunned, they don't know what to say.
It's quite nice not to hear nonsense for a change, but, you know, this just shows how out of step everybody else is and how irrelevant everybody else is. This is Trump in control. This is Trump and Zelensky and nobody else, really. You know, they could all chip in, and Starmer and Macron and all the rest of it. They could do their showboating moments. But this is about Donald Trump. This is about the US and Ukraine. And, you know, everybody else can pretend to be at the table, but these are the two that matter.
Well, enough from us. It's the people that count. Let's talk to the people. First up, it's Peter in Dorset. Hello, Peter.
Hello there. Good evening. This is just another take on what's been going on and what repercussions I believe it has, and that is that this is the biggest wake-up call that Europe could have, knowing how such a fine line it is between what is going on with America, Ukraine, and whether we've got Russia really on our doorstep. And I read the other day that, you know, if Ukraine were to have 4.5 million drones built compared with 1.5 the previous year, maybe Ukraine might be on top of things. But when I'm not talking about Ukraine getting involved anymore, it's about how strong Europe can be, and it's not about missiles being fired with America and Russia. It's about that Putin should know that when looking at Europe, he's looking at a strong Europe, and this is the biggest wake-up call, if it hasn't already been over the last few years, that Europe needs to get its act together militarily, and the British. Donald Trump absolutely took the mickey out of Keir Starmer as regards could the British be fighting Russia on their own.
Yeah. Oh, we lost. Is he still there? What happened to? Oh, that was making a really good point.
Yeah,
what the hell
it was a
happened?
really good point.
Are you still there, Peter?
I'm still here.
Oh, sorry. You were just saying, we literally lost you at the fascinating point where you were talking about Trump telling Starmer, could you fight Russia on your own? What were you about to say?
Well, he was just completely showing how weak and how miserable we are militarily, and that Europe and Britain need to get its act together big time to show that there's a strong Europe without America. We cannot rely on America like some other time in the Second World War.
But who knows? The thing about Trump is you can never quite tell what the direction of travel is. But if we're to take everything we've just seen at face value, in fact, the events of the last couple of weeks at face value, basically Trump has made it very clear that he sees Ukraine as a European problem, and that American support going forward is going to be limited. And it is really interesting, perhaps Pete Barnes will want to comment on this as well, that, throughout his first presidency and even when he was out of the presidency, Trump has been saying to the NATO nations, you've got to start stepping up to the plate and paying your fair dues in terms of your defence budget. It's supposed to be 5%. We are spending 2.3%, and we're only pledging to go to 2.5%. France and Germany even worse. Only Poland is anywhere near, I think 4.1%. So Trump's saying that. Everybody agrees with him on that. Nobody listened to him at all. But at the point over the last couple of weeks, Peter, where Trump said, well, listen, you may well be on your own. America might pull out. All of a sudden, the European nations are trying, particularly Britain, are trying to do something about their defence budgets.
But it's this 2.5% is a miserable amount.
Agreed.
I agree. I totally agree.
And
by the way, that's by 2027.
Yeah, that's the big
point.
What
Starmer pledged, this was supposed to be appease Trump. Trump saying you've got to spend 5%, which is a bit ridiculous because America only spends 3.38% themselves. He said, you've got to spend 5%. So Starmer turns around and said, I've done it, Donald, I've done it. We currently spend 2.3%. I've set in motion a roadmap, and by 2027 we'll be spending 2.5%. It's pathetic, isn't it?
At the end of the day, this isn't about trying to appease Donald Trump. This is about having a strong Europe without any question of a doubt. There should be no grey area or red herrings or anything else in between here. We need a strong Europe. And it's about time that everybody in Europe smelt the coffee. Some have smelt the coffee. There are Scandinavians who've got big reservists.
Agreed.
We've got Poland have done 4.7%. We've got people who are trying to do something about it. But as far as I'm concerned, this is about getting a strong Europe. And this argument, and looking at this about some minerals in Ukraine, at the end of the day, this is a red herring. Europe needs to be strong on its own. Regardless of the United States.
Well, I think that's true. I think it's absolutely true. It's a very good point.
I think it's a mixture. I completely agree with everything you've just said there, Peter, to a degree. I do think this is actually about Europe, getting in the game, sorting itself out, and actually, Trump has come along and pulled away all the sweets, and he said, and I think he's perfectly right to say, well, you've got to step up, you've got to do something.
He's done good to Europe.
He has.
I actually think he's done it. Sucking on the teat of America.
100%. And I think you're right. Europe is a complete disarray. It's actually an embarrassment how bad our armed forces are. Let's not forget, it's about 74,000, down from 102,000 in 2006. You know, it was General Sanders who said it would be a whole nation undertaking just to get back to the thing. But
I've got to tell you this, Peter, both Peters, I'll get both your responses. This is astonishing. So after that row, that explosive row we saw, I think that's part of the Oval Office, isn't it?
Yeah.
By the fireplace. Zelensky, this is confirmed, this is 100%. Zelensky didn't storm out of the White House. He was ordered to leave the White House by Donald Trump's team. What do you reckon of that, Peter?
Well, I'll be honest with you. It's very difficult as a layperson just watching the TV and what's going on exactly behind the scenes. But as far as I'm concerned, I think there's been a huge mistake made here. Normally, we're talking about
by whom? By whom? Yeah. By whom?
But by everybody. A diplomatic situation should have been going on. If there was something to go on and argue about, it should have gone on in peace and quiet somewhere else.
I think that's probably what they intended.
No, so this is quite an interesting point, Peter, because everybody keeps saying about J.D. Vance's comment, is saying, oh, you're doing this in front of the world's press. The fact that this was televised is a big indicator of what Donald Trump also wanted in front of the world's press. Yeah. They're both as bad as each other at playing this game. But this whole thing about Zelensky wearing a kind of the khakis and this wartime stuff, it is his image. It's the same as Churchill's hat. It's a whole kind of brand awareness. It's basic kind of PR politics. But, you know, that is a really, really good point, is that, you know, I think it should have been behind closed doors. And Trump has done this so he could have that outburst. I'm starting to think that this was orchestrated to scare Europe into getting its act together.
I don't disagree with that.
I think there's something to this, that actually, you know, Trump has not seen any kind of movement that he would like from other European nations. And this is about scaring them into action.
Peter, thank you for an excellent call. Keep in touch. Call me again. Peter in Dorset. Look, people think Trump's sort of chaotic.
There's always a plan.
But he's got a plan. And you're right. This may be all part of the bigger picture, that he wants to scare Europe into realising you do what we say or you are on your own. He's certainly changing the goalposts in a massive way.
Yeah, it's interesting. He's changing the goalposts every 30 seconds.
Yes.
I think that keeping that chaos is very important for him.
Yeah. Well, listen, we're going to go to break now, and Gareth in Derbyshire, stay where you are. We'll come to you after this break.
So does Putin want to stop this war or does he not? Because if he doesn't want to stop this war, then putting our nose up his backside, which is effectively what all this stuff has been that Trump has been doing, not going to change anything. If he wants to stop this war, then we don't need to be doing all. I mean, this is then a simple negotiation of interests. What are his interests? What are our interests? What are Ukraine's interests? And let's go to the negotiating table.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Ursula von der Leyen, the EU chief, has just tweeted support for Zelensky, for Volodymyr Zelensky. I'll read it out to you. Vasha Ivyskut, Jivash Via. She's done it in Russian. Silly.
Yeah.
Bloody woman.
Having her support is like having a chocolate teapot. Absolutely
exactly.
useless.
Yeah, suddenly I'm completely on Trump's side.
Yeah.
Anybody who's supported by Ursula von der Leyen is an enemy of mine. But she's done it in Russian. How ridiculous. Do it in English. He speaks English, as we just found out, a lot better than you would believe, as he's led us to believe. Also, the one thing to remember about him, remember Russia, or rather Ukraine, is a country of many different peoples. And actually, Volodymyr Zelensky's first language is Russian, and apparently his Ukrainian is not very good at all, which is an interesting dynamic. Let's go back to the phones now. Oh, just before we do, let's reiterate what we revealed to you just before the break, that we thought that after that massive explosive row between J.D. Vance, Trump and Zelensky in the Oval Office by the fireplace there, that Zelensky had stormed off in a huff. Far from it. This has now been confirmed. President Zelensky of Ukraine was ordered to leave the White House by Donald Trump's team. That is extraordinary. It's absolutely extraordinary. Well, let's ask our next caller, Gareth in Derbyshire. Welcome, Gareth.
Good evening.
Let me
to you.
Good to talk to you. After what we just said, after what you just heard, that he's been. Well, we saw the row. And now we know that he was ordered to leave the White House. Do you think there's any coming back from this?
Well, I'm not sure, but I think you guys, just before the break, to an extent, stole my foot. But could we all agree that we've just witnessed a diplomatic car crash of exceptional proportions?
It's too early to tell if that's correct.
On Zelensky's part, it didn't go according to plan. Knowing Donald Trump, he probably had something like that in mind. So whether or not he views what just happened as a diplomatic car crash is open to debate. Well, this guy deliberately, he's a disruptor. He causes chaos.
But that's what I'm going to come to. What was this preempted? Was it a plan? And the thing is, the big worry, because this is serious, we're in Europe. And really, Donald Trump, right from the start when he's got involved in this, he sent a message to Europe that he doesn't want to be interested in this. It's our problem.
Yeah, very much Ukraine is a European problem. Yes, absolutely.
Have we got leadership? You see the way that Keir Starmer has done this special interview with Donald Trump, which is really, I had to put my head under a stone when I was watching that.
It was horrible, wasn't it?
It was really frightening. If you're British and you think if you want to be proud to be British, and you watch that. I really wanted to jump in.
He looked,
not come out of it.
Didn't he look, Gareth? He looked terrified, didn't he? He looked like some kid getting chastised by the headmaster.
But he's out of his depth. The man is out of his depth. Well, I tell you what, tonight, Donald Trump has taken him to the top of a high diving board and thrown him in the water, because I want to wait. I want to see people like Macron, Starmer, and whoever's in charge of Germany these days. I'm not sure. What is their reaction going to be? Because, you know, we need to start to step up to the plate. You know, we've got behind Ukraine right from the start. We've got Ukrainians living in the UK who we've given a home to.
Yeah.
What are we going to do? Because, you know, we can't just go to America every time with a begging bowl.
Yeah, well, I think that, listen, Gareth, you're absolutely right. And I think Donald Trump is making that clear. And I think this is a good thing for Europe. We've become too reliant on America, or complacent about the automatic support of America. And the fact that we're not going to get that anymore, I think, is good for us. We've got to learn to stand on our own 2 feet. Gareth, great points. I've got to move on, but thank you for an excellent call. Gareth in Derbyshire there. Now, just before we go to the news, here's a clip from what would have been my show, What Just Happened, starting in about 3 minutes, but it won't be. But have a look at this.
You're going to have to flush out this extremism on both sides as well. Netanyahu. Wait there, Netanyahu does have a massive problem with right-wing Israeli Zionist zealots.
Excuse me, did you just call someone who wants a two-state solution a Zionist? Are you mad?
No.
Benjamin Netanyahu is defending his people. How dare you,
I'm not calling Benjamin Netanyahu. I'm saying he's
You're calling him a Zionist.
You're not listening to me. No, you're not listening to me.
Two-state solution.
No, you're not listening to me. He's got some rabid right-wingers who are extremists in the same mould as Hamas.
So I'm in that show as well. In fact, I'm the host. You wouldn't know it, would you? Anyway, that would have been starting in 2 minutes, but instead we're going to carry on with this because it's too big a story. But this is to let you know that we will continue on YouTube, DAB Plus and radio. And What Just Happened will be with you tomorrow morning, Saturday at 9:30 a.m. as per, on there on YouTube, all the normal outlets, and you can watch that anytime you like. You can watch it live at 9:30, but even What Just Happened has to take second place now and again to the biggest news stories, and we are living through right now one of the biggest news stories of recent times. Something pretty massive just happened in the White House that will change the direction of travel in terms of Ukraine, Russia, America. Who knows in what way it will change it, but something's going to happen, right, Pete?
Well, if it has to. I just think it's got to, but what that's going to be, I don't know.
Yeah,
this is absolutely fascinating.
It is, and we'll be dealing with this for the next hour, so stay tuned here. What Just Happened tomorrow morning on YouTube and all the normal outlets, so enjoy that show then. But as for now, you'll have to stick with me and Pete, and I think you'll agree we should stick with this story. Lots of calls, lots of messages, so keep your calls coming in. We've got more guests coming up. As I say, this is one of the biggest stories of recent times. Something extraordinary happened in the White House as President Trump, J.D. Vance, the Vice President, and the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, went at it hammer and tongs. Extraordinary. Stick around. We'll be back in a minute.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. We're with you until 10 p.m. For this very special evening and this massive story after that explosive row in the White House between Zelensky, Trump and J.D. Vance. Just to remind you of that, we're going to talk to Errol Moore-Coach in a little while, just a few minutes from the Republican Overseas Organisation. He's hanging on. We're going to take more of your calls, but just to remind you, to give you a flavour of what happened, here's Donald Trump telling Zelensky a lot of rhetoric from the Americans say, you're not respecting us, you don't say thank you. Here's Trump tearing into Zelensky.
I've empowered you to be a tough guy. And I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. And your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out. But you don't have the cards. But once we sign that deal, you're in a much better position.
Extraordinary. Well, let's go over straight away now to Republican Overseas Representative Errol Moore-Coach. Hi, Errol. Are you back in Britain?
No, still
oh
here.
Oh, my God. You're still recovering?
I actually might end up getting a surgery now. It's getting worse.
Oh, my God. You're stuck in your home country. California could be worse, mate. Could be worse.
Yeah, it is pretty sunny, as you can see.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. It's not sunny here. Thank you for joining us. Well, we've just learned, I mean, obviously you know what we want to talk about, those extraordinary scenes. We just had your colleague Greg Swenson on it. He was as shocked and as stunned as we were, as everybody is. But we've just heard two announcements have come out of the White House since that incendiary bust-up. One was the White House stressing no deal has been signed on Ukrainian minerals. In other words, don't make the mistake of thinking that we have skin in the Ukrainian game. That's what that message is. And the other one that's just emerged, Errol, which is absolutely blockbuster stuff, this has been confirmed. We assumed that in a huff Zelensky had stormed out of the White House and cancelled the press conference. The White House has just confirmed that, in fact, he was ordered to leave the White House by Donald Trump's team. Amazing. So, first of all, your thoughts on the entire situation. Kind of changed the dial, hasn't it?
Yeah, and I think the what you really have to focus on here is Zelensky. Zelensky knew the parameters and the actors and the metrics and the situation going into this. He has top advisors all around him, and he failed to read the room whatsoever. It might sound like a small thing, but if he had shown up for the first time in any of our lifetimes, seen him wearing a suit as opposed to dressed like a cartel member, then perhaps that would have started off on a better foot. But from the initial point of vantage, Donald Trump sees it as disrespectful. Just as, like, I'm going to come on your show and I'm going to speak to you and your viewers, I'm going to wear a suit and a tie because I respect the seriousness of the discussion. Zelensky doesn't respect the seriousness of the White House to that point. So it started off at a bad point. And then you saw a huge ideological difference through the body language. One thing I want your viewers to focus on was there was a point where Donald Trump was talking about the deaths on all sides, how mothers and fathers are losing their kids in this war. And he was including Russian mothers and fathers. And Zelensky was getting visibly agitated. And then he said, yes, they invaded our country. They took in our country. And yes, he should be, Ukraine first. But he was totally not getting on the wavelength of Trump, who was looking at this as he wants a peace deal. So Zelensky came in there. He came in there very bellicose. And it was almost like when J.D. Vance challenged him publicly and saying, well, hey, you know, you haven't done this, you wouldn't have this. And Zelensky came back and started to, you know, be very hostile. And I think that type of disrespect, and also little things, when he said, I'm not playing cards, and Trump said, yes, you are playing cards. You absolutely are playing cards. You're playing a very dangerous game that could result in World War III. You need American support, and we don't feel that you've been a maybe the best actor. And so I think one thing to take away here is that the United States of America and the Ukrainian nation do not need, I mean, Donald Trump and Zelensky don't have to be the presidents for these people to work together. So if I mean, we'll have Trump, but if Zelensky is replaced with somebody else, it doesn't mean that it's the end of the relationship. It just might mean that Zelensky's not the guy going forward. He doesn't seem to be able to understand the room, and he doesn't seem to understand that Trump is only about peace. He's not about leverage and trying to push things back. He wants to end the war. And so until Zelensky gets on board with that, you saw some recalcitrant tweets at the end. Getting thrown out of the White House, though, I mean, that's pretty tough. I mean, you saw the people who went to the White House under Joe Biden. They didn't get thrown out, and they were much less respectful of the office than Zelensky was. I think ultimately the rhetoric was what held him back, and a lack of respect for some of the protocols that Donald Trump appreciates. Something that Keir Starmer did very well, read the room, showed up, had an excellent, I mean, comparatively excellent experience in the White House. So I think it just points to Zelensky's lack of gamesmanship. This was a really poor performance by somebody who needed to be on the top of his game.
Yeah, now I'm sort of on your side, Errol, but I'm with my friend and colleague Pete Barnes, political strategist, who's on the other side of the fence. Pete thinks he'll chime in a minute. Trust me, but he thinks that this is all. You know, that Trump's just being a blowhard and, in fact, will not withdraw support from Ukraine. He's just trying to sort of threaten, cause chaos and somehow force some kind of peace deal. The last element of that, I think there's no doubt he wants to try to force a peace deal. But what he said to Zelensky was, you know, you better make a deal, and you better make a deal fast or we're pulling out. Pete doesn't think America will. What do you think?
I'm inclined to agree with Pete here, especially. Well, this might be the short-term media sort of time scale. When you look at the deep collaboration we have with so many different parties, and you know, just the Five Eyes relationship that's involved globally for this, when you look at the strategic resources, I mean, one thing that people don't think about, in the east of Ukraine, where Vladimir Putin has been successful, there's roughly estimated $20 trillion of minerals, okay? So let's say he's lost 500,000 soldiers. That's $40 million a head. People who are dictators, who actually do this stuff and do this math, they have no problem with throwing those kind of bodies at a situation when there's that kind of money on line. I promise you, if it was half that, Vladimir Putin would shoot his soldiers in the back of the head to make $20 million per head. So you're dealing with a really serious, I mean, it's brutal because people don't realize what trillions are. I mean, it's trillions at stake. And so that's why I totally agree with what Pete's probably arguing here, that we're too entrenched to be able to just blow this all up. But in the short term, maybe we will indicate that we will a little bit. We'll
bring Pete in just a second, but another point I want to make to you, Errol, is we had the Sun's excellent defence editor, Jerome Starkey, on the show earlier, and he's in Ukraine right now. So he's been sounding out what the reaction of the Ukrainians is to what happened in the White House. And they are stunned, shocked, and they feel betrayed. But what you're saying is that, you know, perhaps don't take Trump completely literally when he sort of threatens to say you'll be on your own unless you sign this deal, that in fact American support will continue.
I think it will, and I think also he was probably bolstered by Keir Starmer coming over and very openly committing that the UK would be willing to commit troops. And Macron, behind closed doors, has said he's willing to commit troops. And potentially Olaf Scholz and I guess they replaced him. I don't even know who's in charge of there anymore. But these people will commit some troops.
Mertz.
And so
it's a guy called Mertz.
Oh, wonderful. Let's see how long he sticks around. Hopefully he's qualified.
Yeah, undoubtedly not. So, Pete, what do you want to say? Come on.
No, okay, so first of all, on the issue of him not wearing a suit, this is image, this is PR, this is what Zelensky has been doing for a long time. That kind of green khaki, I'm a wartime president, is all part of the image that he's been able to put out there. It's the same way that Donald Trump had the MAGA hat. Donald Trump is just as obsessed with image as Zelensky is. So yes, it is a little disrespectful, but you've got to understand the bigger picture that Zelensky looks like he's still at war. Because this is the one thing that, listening to Jerome, who was on the ground in Ukraine, he's talking about, though, like a wartime medic field hospital, and where the people are coming in and they're bleeding. And Zelensky's point is that it's not Americans dying in the fields, it is Ukrainians, it's his people. He's fighting this fight in a way that I don't think Donald Trump and any other country can really understand, because it's not their people. It's not that America doesn't have skin in the game. It's that it's not American kids dying in the streets. And that's the point why Zelensky has come at this in the way that he has, is that he's seeing the point where he's saying, like, wait a minute, we're all supposed to be allies. We're all supposed to help each other. I'm being attacked by a tyrant, and you're saying you're now quibbling over the price of milk? You know, it was one of the great American presidents that said that when your neighbor's house is on fire, you don't quibble over the price of water. That was Roosevelt to get America involved in World War II. It was one of the most important speeches, and I tell you now, it cemented the great relationship that we have. But Trump, I do think there is a bigger plan. I think that it is about bringing Zelensky to heel, to show that he's not in control. Yeah. It's about scaring Europe half to death to get its act together, and I think that's worked perfectly. But I do think there is also a bigger plan here, and I think you're bang on with the minerals rights and all these kind of Five Eyes, and the fact we're so ingrained with each other that, you know, this idea they're just going to pull out is nonsense. But it's the threat. And the thing that kept peace, and the thing that kept everybody else at bay between 2016 and 2020 was the threat that you didn't know what he was going to do. Yeah. And that's Trump Theory 101. Yeah. You keep guessing, you keep them guessing, you keep them on the toes, they're not going to make a move. And that's what he's doing here. And I think it's a big gamble. Yeah. And I mean, like, he might be playing cards, but Trump's, playing just as much of a dangerous game, I think, as Zelensky
I think what we've got going on here, Errol, I think that, you know what Trump is. I mean, this is the way he goes about business. He's a disruptor. He causes chaos, but he's got a plan. He emerges from that chaos with a dealing strategy. You know what he's like. I suspect that this bust up at the White House was a little bit more than he'd planned for, but I do think that he wanted to give Zelensky a dressing down. So I think Pete's probably right. There's a game plan here, and they probably, we shouldn't assume that Trump and Zelensky will never speak again. There will be some kind of rapprochement, would you estimate, in the days to come?
Yeah, I think so. I think there definitely is. And I think one thing to keep in mind also is that both leaders were obviously playing to their own domestic audience.
That's a big point.
Good point.
Was very strong. I'm here for Ukraine first. I'm not going to concede anything here. And that's what he should be doing. And Donald Trump always says that. You should be your country first. So Zelensky was very directed at that, and then you saw how Trump, especially using JD, I mean, that was red meat for the domestic base in America who's been very frustrated. Maybe they're not political sophisticates who tune in every night, but over the last 3 years, they've seen, things go in a direction that they're not happy with, and finally seen some dressing down or whatever. I think that plays well. So I think we might have been looking at this in a geopolitical perspective, and this meeting was actually two players playing domestic politics, and that's gone over everybody's heads.
Yeah, so interesting. But I do think he had a plan, but I don't think he planned for this. Yeah. It was a bit more than.
Can I just chime in really, really quick? I think, Errol, you've hit the major point here. It's interesting how Israel, Gaza, and this incident in Ukraine has had such an impact on domestic politics, like nothing we've ever seen in quite some time. This kind of. We're all involved, we're all talking the good game, but then the impact that it's had on political parties, candidates, the positions of certain bedfellows and all the rest of it is absolutely fascinating, and it's something that I don't think our politics is ready for. And I have to admit, I think that's a really, really important point, is the domestic politics aspect of all of this.
Agree. Now, Errol, last question. When do you think you're coming back?
I'm aiming for end of April. Yeah. I'm aiming for end of April right now.
We are so going to have a beer, because
absolutely.
we've never met. I've only ever known you in California, and you're supposed to live in bloody London. But
I know.
Anyway, when you get back, I'll buy you a drink, but we'll talk before that. Thank you so much for sparing the time to talk to us. That's Errol Moore, coach from the Republican Overseas Organisation. He's been stuck. That's not true. He's from California. He went there for Christmas. He had a car crash, and that's why he's stuck there, because he's injured. COVID. He's had surgery and stuff, and he's not allowed to fly. But he's been coming on the show a lot. Listen, we're going to go to break now, and hanging on the line, we'll talk to him as soon as we come back, is President Trump's former campaign chairman, Rick Gates. It should be interesting to hear what he has to say. Stay tuned for that.
So does Putin want to stop this war, or does he not? Because if he doesn't want to stop this war, then putting our nose up his backside, which is effectively what all this stuff has been that Trump has been doing, is not going to change anything. If he wants to stop this war, then we don't need to be doing all. I mean, this is then a simple negotiation of interests. What are his interests? What are our interests? What are Ukraine's interests? And let's go to the negotiating table.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. We're just waiting to connect with Rick Gates. He's President Trump's former campaign chairman. He's in New York at the moment. Hopefully we'll get him on the show very soon. In the meantime, never let it be said that I don't bring you the big stories. Here's what happened, right? Elon Musk will be very pleased. So, after this meeting, this row, there was planned to be a sit-down lunch with Trump, Vance and Zelensky and their aides. It was salad, chicken and creme brulee. Now, Elon Musk is trying to cut out waste. He'll be furious that that went to waste, you know. No, but no, it didn't. The White House staff sat down and ate it. So the chicken salad and creme brulee. A special lunch for Zelensky was eaten by White House staff shortly after they kicked him out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you couldn't make this stuff
But that
up.
is not an accident. That is, again, part of this big plan to show that Trump's in charge and Zelensky's just another player.
Oh, come on. They didn't plan the...
No, they didn't plan it, but, you know, when this has presented itself, they'll run with it. This will be like, you know, America carries on without Zelensky, you know.
Well,
That's
I don't
the
think America would be too troubled to carry on without Zelensky. Let's remind ourselves while we try and get hold of Rick, you know, some of the narrative of what we saw. This is Trump and Vance rounding on the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, demanding, you know, it's Vance going, have you said thank you? Have you said thank you? Watch this.
We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly
this. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influenced.
We're going to feel very good and very
you,
strong.
You will feel influenced.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards.
Cards.
Right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's backed you far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once? This entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you? You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war,
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country is in big trouble. Wait a minute. No. You've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
It's just extraordinary, isn't it? Listen, while we try to connect with Rick Gates over in New York, we will get him, don't worry. Let's talk to Susan in Essex. Hello, Susan.
Hi, Kevin. How are you doing?
I'm all right. I've got a note saying that you think Zelensky planned all this. I don't think anybody planned this.
Well, no, he didn't plan the war, obviously. But why did he take in the photographs to the press conference? It's like he almost wanted trouble there. You don't do that in an international press conference, and that's done behind doors.
But it wasn't. I mean, they don't actually sort of categorise what we saw there as a press conference. That's this weird system. We saw it yesterday with Keir Starmer. They gather around the fireplace in the Oval Office first for what's kind of an informal chat. And weirdly, the press are there, the media are there. So it becomes a kind of press conference. And then they go for a break, and then they have a formal press conference where they stand behind the podiums. So we were seeing the unofficial, what's supposed to be the social occasion.
Yeah, it's supposed to be everybody holding hands.
Yeah, that's supposed to be where they all agree that they're friends. So it wasn't really a press conference. But I think, to answer your question, why did he go in there armed with those photographs? I think just like Trump, he had a game plan.
Yeah.
He wanted to control he wanted to control the narrative to his advantage, to the advantage of the Ukraine. And as I think we saw, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance weren't having any of that.
Now, where I think, Susan, you might be right here, is I actually think this was Zelensky trying to get Europe on his side. That he wanted to paint Trump as the bully and the bad guy. And I think this was actually more of a signal to that you could argue he provoked Trump.
Europe is on his side.
But to actually rally around him and actually say that they're going to put troops on the ground to actually
they have said that.
Not all of them.
Well,
and that's the point.
Britain and France have.
He's hedging his bets, one against the other. Europe against America is what he's doing.
I think might be something to that. I'm not going to lie. I do think there might be something to that.
Yeah, but what I think, Susan, what we saw is Zelensky didn't plan this massive explosive row, and in fairness, nor did Trump or J.D. Vance, but it happened. It sure as hell happened. What did you make of it?
In there, Kevin, with an agenda. And
yeah, but not for what happened. Not for what happened.
No, but he was going to be strong and he was going to fight America because we in Europe are anti-Trump. I'm not. I love Trump. But he had an agenda and he kind of played it well. So
he played it well? He got kicked out of the White House.
He played it well in the respect that now Europe, we're all up in arms about Trump again.
Well, are we? Are we?
Well, let's look at it. You know, Starmer's just pledged to increase.
I'm not up in arms about Trump.
No, but
me neither.
Or JD Vance.
But no, I agree with you, Susan. I think there might be something, if you think about it, Starmer's pledged defence funding, France has, you know, Germany's kind of getting back in the game, you know. This action has rallied Europe, but it's rallied them around Zelensky, not around Trump. There is still that very clear divide between NATO Europe and the United States, and this has only increased that gap. So
exactly,
that might have been the outcome.
Yeah,
but don't forget, Europe already did support Zelensky, so Zelensky didn't sort of decide, I know what I'll do. I'll cause a massive, great bust up at the White House, so Europe supports me. Europe already does.
But then look at it on the domestic level.
Problematically, he went there. What you've been speaking about this evening.
Yeah.
He had a game plan, and if he didn't get what he wanted, then that's what I believe anyway.
Yeah, but I know what you mean. I think there were several game plans going on there on both sides of the fence. None of them expected this. Personally, I think Trump and Vance came out of this better. Zelensky didn't emerge from it very well, but you know, that's open to debate, and people can give me a ring and let me know what they think about that. Susan, I've got to go to break, but very good point, interesting and well made. Thanks for calling. Call me again. Susan in Essex. Now, we're going to go to break now. I said this at the last break, didn't I? When we come back, we're going to talk to Rick Gates, former campaign chairman for President Trump. I think he will be ready, and I do believe we might even have him in vision. So the whole package, or the whole 9 yards, as they say in America. That next. Stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Well, I think we finally got hold of him, so a warm welcome to the show to the President Trump's former campaign chairman, Rick Gates. Hello, Rick.
Hey, Kevin, good to be with you.
Thank you for joining us. Obvious question. Your thoughts on that explosive bust-up that we witnessed just a couple of hours ago in the White House? Just some of the most extraordinary scenes we've ever seen. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it was historic. It was epic. Look, it's transparent democracy. I think about 3/4 of the way through their little skirmish, President Trump even said, hey, this is great for the American people to see, because typically all you see are these kind of prepackaged readouts of calls or meetings between world leaders. And more importantly, look, I think this is important. So the media cannot now skew this, right? Every American, every person in the world is going to see it for themselves, draw their own opinion. So I think that's very valuable. And look, I think it's good for people to understand how diplomacy works. And it's not always easy. And I think that, President Trump clearly came away with a win for the day. But I think that more importantly, we've got to figure out how to get Ukraine back on track for peace, because there were two things that President Trump wanted out of today. He wanted the mineral deal, and he wanted to make sure that Zelensky was going to commit to peace, and he got neither of those.
Yeah, and the White House let it be known pretty soon after this bust-up that no mineral deal has been signed yet. So what they were keen to stress is don't make the mistake of thinking we have any skin in the game to necessarily defend Ukraine. And also, I don't know if you're aware of this, Rick, but the White House has, just in the last half an hour or so, confirmed that Zelensky didn't storm out and cancel the press conference. He was ordered to leave by Donald Trump's staff. So quite a turn of events. What do you think is going to happen next?
Look, I think ultimately Zelensky has already set out, kind of a post saying, thank you, President, thank you, Congress. I think cooler heads will prevail. But I do think that Zelensky has put himself in a very bad position. I think he was bolstered by pretty cordial visits by President Macron and your illustrious Prime Minister, Mr. Starmer, earlier in the week.
Our Prime Minister, anyway. You don't need illustrious.
Exactly. And so I think he was emboldened by that. And I think that President Zelensky probably got out over his skis, as we like to say, and needed, in his opinion, to project strength. But you don't do that by poking Donald Trump. He is not going to back down, and certainly not in his Oval Office in his White House.
Yeah, I did. I thought it was strange that at one point, J.D. Vance saying never once as you said thank you, President Trump reiterating that sentiment and saying, oh, look, we've given you $350 billion. And Zelensky replied, we've done this on our own. They haven't done it on their own, have they? I mean, not only has America chipped in this enormous quantity of money and weapons, all the European nations, including ours, have given him a hell of a lot of money. So it's a bit of a stretch to say Ukraine has done this on their own.
Absolutely. I think the Europeans need to be very careful because, you're going to get what you ask for. And if they want to back Zelensky financially, then that's going to be a problem for the European Union countries. It's going to be a problem for the UK that wants to commit that money. Obviously, the U.S. has given a lot of money. I don't know if Europe is prepared to follow suit, but I think that without the U.S., there is no way Russia is going to be willing to do a deal. If there's anybody that liked what happened today, obviously it's Vladimir Putin and the Russian government. It's kind of like a blank check for them in terms of seeing Zelensky fall on his face and not being able to close the deal. That is certainly going to set things back. I think it's very important that Zelensky and his advisors, and I imagine the Rada is going to be the Ukrainian parliament, is going to put a lot of pressure for Zelensky to get things back on track. Kevin, he has an interview tonight with Bret Baier, and I think that's going to be an interesting interview. I think he's going to probably come out with some sort of statement very quickly, apologizing for his conduct and certainly wanting to get back to Washington to try to negotiate these two pieces.
And although this explosive bust-up was probably more than Donald Trump had anticipated, I suspect that this is the way Trump goes about business. I mean, he's a disruptor. He causes sometimes causes chaos deliberately, out of which his pre-planned order emerges, if you see what I mean. So I think putting Zelensky in his place was always the plan. What do you think will happen next? When Donald Trump said to him, listen, you better make a deal and you better make one fast, otherwise, effectively says, otherwise you're on your own. Do you think he actually means that, or will American support always be there going forward?
No, I absolutely believe he meant it. And I think that out of today, he now has a lot more leverage. And I think Zelensky is going to be, I think he's going to have to probably give up some of the concessions that he thought he might be able to discuss with the president and his administration. I think it puts Zelensky in a much more difficult position. But Donald Trump would absolutely walk away. You heard him talk about it in the campaign. You know, we may find ways to help Ukraine, not financially, not militarily, if the need arises. But certainly Zelensky's display today didn't engender any motivation from President Trump or the Trump administration to go out of their way to help them after they've already given them, you know, over $200 billion.
What's your feeling going forward, Rick? I mean, are we, through this kind of unconventional path, heading towards Donald Trump succeeding in forcing some kind of peace deal? Obviously, the peace deal will involve America and Russia, and it would have to involve Ukraine as well. Obviously, you can't have a peace deal between two countries about another country if that other country doesn't agree to it. So going forward, do you think Trump will succeed in achieving peace?
I do. I think the way that he's approached tackling Russia on its own and then finding out what kind of their terms and conditions are going to be. We had an American delegation meeting with a group of Russians to look at restoring diplomatic ties, giving Russia, you know, more voice at the table, and then being able to take that and go back to Ukraine. So I absolutely think that there is a deal to be done. If anybody can find it, it will be Donald Trump. And look, what you saw today was part of the negotiation process, right? Of course. Yeah, they're right. There's give, there's take, there's emotion, there's anger, there's happiness. I don't think this is the end of it. I think that President Trump, while he wants to get this done pretty quickly, I think Zelensky is going to have to really consider what's important to him in this process. Obviously, NATO, being a part of the EU, some of those other conditions that were taken off the table early, there's not a lot Zelensky has left to work with, and he certainly didn't help his position today at all.
Well, critics say that Donald Trump is favouring Russia too much and may well sort of edge towards some kind of deal that sells Ukraine out and is very favourable to Putin. What do you say to that, Rick?
No, I disagree, because the deal's not going to get done without Ukraine signing that mineral rights deal.
Good point.
And so Trump's not going to go forward with it, so there won't be a deal. So that, look, Trump is balancing it on both sides. He is looking out for the interests of the American public. You know, critics are going to read into, you know, his verbiage on Russia. That's fine. They've been doing that for 8 years. But at the end of the day, if you look at how many sanctions Donald Trump put on the Russians back during, you know, his first term as presidency, and the what he's willing to do in terms of hard negotiations right now, and maybe even increasing sanctions on the Russians if they don't bend, I think that he is going to be very pragmatic in making sure he gets what he wants from America from both sides.
Going back to what you said about the transparency of this, the people actually seeing these people disagreeing in a rather volatile way, you'll know about this. As you say, you know, what we usually get is the kind of sort of beautiful version of two sides meeting. It's all sort of theatrical for television and everything. But when these kind of talks go on behind closed doors, is this the kind of rhetoric that often unfolds, you know, angry, shouting at each other as you approach some kind of agreement, and then they go onto television and say, hey, we're the best of buddies and we just conducted these negotiations in the most civilized fashion? So did we get a glimpse into what these kind of talks are really like behind closed doors?
You absolutely did. It doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen more often than at least American administrations let on. And that's why I'm so happy that the American people got to see this today, and the global community, because I think it's important to see what happens, you know, maybe on Sunday. Why doesn't, you know, your prime minister open up your little roundtable and summit of EU leaders to the public. Let's see what the discussions hold. Let's see how the process unfolds. I think these are important elements, especially for President Trump, who campaigned on bringing a resolution to the Ukraine-Russia crisis. He wants the American people to see who's a stumbling block, who's making, good decisions, who's making bad decisions. Then they can make their own judgment, and that's exactly what they got today.
Can I just, thanks for joining us, Rick, by the way, at short notice. Just briefly, to finish off, can we rewind to yesterday when what you mistakenly called our illustrious Prime Minister stumbled into the White House, little guy in glasses, looked absolutely terrified. Got an invitation from the King. Donald, of course, loved that. Do you think Starmer achieved all that much yesterday? I mean, you know what they say about Trump is, take him seriously, but don't necessarily take him literally. And what he says today, he may not do tomorrow. Donald Trump is someone, I believe, that you should judge by his actions, but not necessarily his words. So if you took everything at face value, what happened in the White House yesterday, absolute triumph for the British Prime Minister. He got agreements on the Chagos Islands. Donald Trump said, I don't think we'll stand in the way. I don't believe that for a second. We damn well hope that Donald Trump stands in the way of that ridiculous Chagos deal. He also talked about a trade deal. Yeah, that could happen. But that will be a long way away. And the one thing I wanted to point out to you, Rick, is Donald Trump has been calling for the NATO nations to contribute 5% of their GDP budget to defence, right? America, by the way, only contributes 3.38, but that's respectable. We, hitherto, have been contributing a pathetic 2.3%, and Keir Starmer acted like it's brilliant. We're going to put our budget up to 2.5%, but it's going to take 2 years. I can't imagine Donald Trump was all that impressed by that.
Not at all. And he's going to hold the UK and other European countries to making those numbers work. And so, look, Keir Starmer came in badly damaged from the way that he treated Donald Trump during the campaign, the rhetoric he used against Donald Trump, sending 100 members of his political party over to help Kamala Harris. Those are things that Donald Trump remembers very well. So, look, President Trump's a very cordial, individual. He's charming. If you're out there to promote him and praise him, he will do the same. But make no mistake, your prime minister still has a lot of work to do to get back on Donald Trump's good side. He is not going to allow that, however, to impact important relations between our two countries. He may have a different view of your prime minister, but in terms of trade and other things, he is still going to hold that to account. If I were the UK, I would be a little concerned about the tariffs. Those are still going to be a leverage point that is used by President Trump.
Couldn't agree more. And would you last point, Rick, because I'd have loved to have seen this, wouldn't you have liked to have seen one of the political media mob, one of those reporters, ask Keir Starmer, what about those 100 of your Labour supporters that you sent to campaign for Kamala Harris? How can you stand here and say you're so close to Donald Trump? Wouldn't you have liked to have seen that question?
That and many more. We were hoping it would be raised. Unfortunately, it wasn't.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'm going next time and I'm going to ask all the difficult questions. Rick, thank you very much. Great to talk to you. Rick Gates there, President Trump's former campaign chairman. Interesting that, Pete, because we would have probably talked tonight long and hard about Starmer's visit.
Yeah.
The credulous British political press.
God.
Oh,
wasn't he wonderful?
I went home last night and I switched on Sky News, and there were these two commentators saying that was his best day as Prime Minister so far. And I thought to myself, well, I'd hate to see his worst day. I mean, it wasn't, as I say, this is a president who last week called Zelensky a dictator and yesterday said, did I? I can't believe I said that. This, so you have to wait to find out what really happens. I'm not convinced, as Rick was indicating there, that Starmer's visit to the White House was anything like a triumph.
I don't think it was a triumph. I think
better than could be expected.
I mean, the expectation was so low. All he had to do was not fall down. And it was a great day for him. You know, let's be real. Like, there was a poll out that said most of the British public thought this was going to be a disaster. So when that happens, you know, all you have to do is not fall over. But I think Starmer got what he wanted, but what he got wasn't very much, because there was nothing really of substance. That was the point. There was no timetables, no kind of structure to anything. It was all vague generalities. The Labour Party are running around saying, look how wonderful it was. Well, what have you actually physically got here of tangible kind of importance? The one thing I will say when it comes to the tariffs is that obviously these are hanging over the EU.
His favourite words apart from love, wife and family or
something like that. But I tell you now, that is interesting, is that the UK is still out of that. That is a bit of a win for Starmer, I'll give him that. But
I agree. But the only sort of you still never know.
No,
you still never know.
And I go back to what Rick was saying then about this being in front of the public. That is part of the chaos game, because it's now got every bit of the press around the world up in arms and mental. And I think that's kind of what Trump wanted here, is it's more chaos. With more chaos, Trump can control the board more. Yeah. And I do think there was a big idea behind what we've just seen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but although it went a bit beyond what anybody had planned. You make an interesting point, as did Susan just now on the phone there, that, you know, I think they both went there, Trump and Zelensky, with a game plan. And didn't really work out how either of them had planned. No. But my take on it is that was better for Trump than it was Zelensky by a New York mile, if I can put it that way.
Or a New York minute.
Good to talk to Rick James there in New York. Let's go to break, and when we come back, I think we've got a couple of WhatsApp voice notes. We'll read a couple of your messages and get a couple of calls in. Actually, that's a lot to do in 10 minutes, but we'll do our best. And then Andre Walker and Ash will be in. Oh my God, I forgot it's James Whale, because I always usually leave at 9 o'clock. It's great. James Whale will be taking you through to 1 a.m. Well, he'll have a lot to say about this, I'll bet. James Whale will be in a little while to let you know what he's got lined up for you. In the meantime, let's go to break and come back in a minute.
It's the first resignation from the cabinet of a Labour minister. It's Annalise Dodds, the development minister. She has resigned over the government's cuts to the foreign aid budget, cuts that were made to fund an increase in defence spending. A massive increase, but it wasn't, was it? Because earlier this week, all Sir Keir Starmer was reveal that international aid would be cut from 0.5% to 0.3% of GDP. And that money would go to defence instead, which is rising from 2.3 to 2.5% of GDP.
So does Putin want to stop this war, or does he not? Because if he doesn't want to stop this war, then putting our nose up his backside, which is effectively what all this stuff has been that Trump has been doing, is not going to change anything. If he wants to stop this war, then we don't need to be doing all. I mean, this is then a simple negotiation of interests. What are his interests? What are our interests? What are Ukraine's interests? And let's go to the negotiation.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Just looking at James Wales' lineup, he's going to take you through till 1 a.m. He'll be with his old sparring partner, his buddy Ash. Got a great lineup. Seb Gorka, love Seb Gorka. So you want to stay tuned for that. Peter Blexley's on, always a star. Andrew Eborn, that's a good show. So James, the great man, will be in a little while to tell us, well, some more of the stuff he's got lined up for you. I just did his job for him, really, didn't I? But he'll do it better. Anyway, quick note here. This is from Jane. She was listening to Greg Swenson earlier. She said, I love listening to Greg. I sort of think Zelensky has been going round relying on other countries. I did feel, though, as though he was being bullied in the playground. It did feel a bit like that. But ultimately, could it be the beginning of the end of the war? I don't understand why Trump favours Putin. I'm not convinced he does.
No, me neither.
He probably wants Putin to believe that he favours him. He certainly, I don't think Zelensky thinks he favours him anymore. But you can never tell with Trump, and people always make the mistake with him of he's stupid. He isn't stupid. No. He's not an intellectual, but he is not stupid. Okay, we've got some WhatsApp voice notes here. They're all on Trump and Zelensky. What else have we been talking about? First, Carl.
Hi, Kevin. Yeah, I must admit, I thought that to Trump, whom I've given the benefit of the doubt since his inauguration, I must admit, was sounding quite unhinged yesterday when he was falling all over Starmer, which I thought was totally inappropriate. But that public performance this evening was poor, classless, and tantamount to bullying, I'm afraid, in my humble opinion.
Great show.
Thank you, Carl. Maybe. Well, look, I'm going to sit on the fence here and say, agree with President Trump. It's great television. Right, here's Claire.
Evening, Kevin. Claire from the Wirral here. That spit-spat between the Three Stooges, or maybe the Three Wise Men, was fueled by J.D. Vance. He was outspoken, arrogant, and disrespectful, and rude to Zelensky. I believe that if J.D. Vance had not been so intimidating, this wouldn't have happened, and it wouldn't have turned into a disgraceful slanging match. Zelensky was goaded, and he responded in an argumentative manner. It would have been better to have calmed things down by telling Zelensky that they would continue this behind closed doors. It was demoralising and bullying.
Well, Claire always sends great WhatsApp voice notes. I'm not sure I quite agree with her.
No, I agree with her full-heartedly.
I don't. I thought J.D. Vance played a blinder.
I thought he looked pathetic.
No, he played a blinder. It's my show. You don't want your input right now. Everybody's got to agree with me. Right. No, you're entitled to your viewpoint. I just don't agree with it. Here's Chloe.
Hi, Kev. On Ukraine, I've no doubt Zelensky will be back, cap in hand. At the end of the day, he needs Trump, doesn't he? I don't know whether it'll be tomorrow, maybe a bit longer to cool off, but they'll get peace eventually. I think these conversations probably happened behind closed doors during World War I and II. At the end of the day, Churchill was a bit irascible, wasn't he? We just weren't party to those conversations then.
Yeah. Exactly right, Chloe. That's the point that Rick Gates was just making. These are the rows that often happen behind closed doors that we, the public, are not party to. So, yeah, interesting times. And finally, Michael. Hello, Michael. Is Michael there?
I was only saying last night to somebody in the pub, I've never heard the Ukraine president, or indeed any Ukrainian over here, ever say thank you. And now I know that's not a reason to go scuppering deals and ceasefires, but a bit of common courtesy from Ukraine wouldn't go amiss. It's always been cajoling, taking money, goodness knows where it's gone, and never a word of gratitude have I heard in all that time. And as I say, it's a very point I made. I might take their cause a little bit more seriously if some of the footballers in Europe who are earning tens of thousands of pounds per week had actually decided to put down those contracts and go and join the front line. Cheers. Bye.
Well, yeah, good point, Michael. All good points. James Wales in the studio. We'll let him just mic up, shall we?
Oh, I thought I had a mic.
Oh, yeah, there he is. He's almost.
I've nearly got one, which is even better. Well, we'll be...
Looking good, James. Looking really good, nice. Mate. Well, I've just read up your lineup. Really good lineup. You've got old Seb Gorka on. He's fantastic. So what's your take on what we saw earlier?
Well, I've got to be very careful because people keep saying you've got to be careful. I don't really understand why would I be careful?
Don't bother saying that to James Wales.
Why would I bother being careful? I thought that Zelensky has got to understand that for peace there has to be a little give and take on both sides. And he played into Trump's hands beautifully. And I thought everybody's saying Trump was a bully, Vance was a bully, but you know, Zelensky, obviously in his mind, wanted to make a mark in that first...
Yeah, good point, absolutely.
Don't you think? Yeah.
Totally right. And I do think that Zelensky, obviously there's a lot to admire about him, but he does exude a sort of certain complacent sense of entitlement. Oh, come on, everybody, you've got to give me... He actually said to Vance and Trump at one point, we've done this on our own. No, you haven't.
If it wasn't for Britain and America, and a bit from Europe, then they wouldn't have had the wherewithal to fight.
Well, they wouldn't have the
still going on now.
Absolutely.
But I do think it's a worry, because if the Third World War does start, then unless we get protection from America, we're gone.
Yeah.
And, you know, all this business about let's increase our military aid, yeah, that's good, but we need to do it now, not in 3 years.
Yeah.
We need to be buying and building in military equipment now.
Do you think there's a certain... Pete Barnes here, he thinks that Donald Trump, it was just hot air and he won't pull the rug from underneath Ukraine's feet. But I think if Zelensky pushes his luck too far, I think America will pull out. What do you think?
I think I'm slightly worried that I agree with you, Kevin. I think Trump is not a politician. He is a negotiator, and I think, okay, throwing a hand grenade in and then standing back to see what sort of reaction is his way
That's
of
his
doing
technique.
it.
Yeah,
It's a very dangerous thing to do with World War III on the precipice. You know, Trump accused Zelensky of gambling with World War III. I think Trump is doing the exact same thing.
What we have done is we have relied on America for years.
Oh, I couldn't agree more with that.
So has Europe.
Yeah.
We have not kept our defence as it should have been.
Yeah.
And we have a bunch of politicians on all sides who, in the main, not all of them, but in the main are completely bloody useless.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I think Ukraine is a kind of microcosm of the European attitude, which is, sucking on America's teat. And what I think is good is that Trump and Vance have made it clear, no more. You're on your own. Start standing on your own 2 feet.
I thought yesterday Keir Starmer